corporate venture capital is going to play a huge role in the overall innovation system in India. I encourage all of you to listen carefully, to challenge. If you have any questions, you have to post them in the chat at any time. Chris is going to do the keynote, but anytime you have a question, please post it in the chat. We'll be happy to take it as and when it's possible. Uh, I hope you enjoy this afternoon. And with that, I am now delighted and, in fact, honored to introduce Chris in very few words. He's the architect of one of the true architects of India's technology revolution. He's not just a co founder of Infosys, he's a visionary who has put India on the global IT map. From steering Infosys, he has done championed deep tech, research, entrepreneurship through his various initiatives. He is a Padma Bhushan awardee, a global thought leader, an inspiration to all young and not so young people on this platform. Please join me in welcoming a true icon of Indian technology and innovation, Chris Gopalkrishnan. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Nainath, for that kind introduction, and more importantly, the introduction to why CVC is important. I'm very happy that we are having this session. I also compliment CIES for sustaining this series of master classes on various aspects of innovation, startups, venture capital, family offices getting involved in the startup ecosystem, and all of these things actually. So I'm very happy. I thank Nainath and the team for organizing it. Western region always has taken leadership uh, in in uh, in innovation and startups. Now, to set the context, Nainath talked about the need from a corporate perspective, from a nation perspective, from India's perspective. I strongly feel that Viksit Bharat will not happen if India does not have leadership in science and technology, if we don't convert our economy into an IP led, innovation led economy. That is why R&D is also very, very important in the shift, and the entire value chain from R&D, research in academic institution, research in corporate world, to uh, moving this innovation from from the academic environment to a startup to a corporate. All of these things are actually very, very important. Translational research and the startup ecosystem, all of these things are very, very important. Over the last 10, 11 years, we have actually seen the startup ecosystem become the third largest startup ecosystem. We have now more than 100 unicorns. Uh, you know, the deep tech ecosystem is definitely growing. The government's initiatives starting from 2014 onwards, Startup India, Make in India, and recently the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, the RDI fund, all of these things, I think the government is taking a front foot in leading this transition to IP led and product led economy. So I strongly feel that corporates have to play their role. Now, I again reiterate this. The foundational principle on which a corporate sustains itself, a corporate grows, is through continuous innovation. If you don't have continuous innovation, uh, I feel that there will be degrowth. I feel that the corporate will start declining. Even its employees may not feel excited to work for that company because it's not innovating. So innovation has to be a habit. Innovation has to be a sustained set of activities within a corporate. Now, you know that if you do not measure, things are not going to happen in a corporate environment. So I put some very simple metrics to measure innovation. The first and foremost is how much the corporate is spending on R&D. This is the classic internal measure of investment in future growth. Second, and this is where you interact with the ecosystem. So the second one is spend of R&D outside the organization. So how much are you working with academic institutions? How much are you working with startups, etc.? Each has its own unique benefits. When you work with academic institutions, you are actually supporting open science. You are opening your organization to innovation that's happening in the ecosystem, in the academic environment, etc. Whether you realize or not, it's important to note that when you do innovation inside the organization, it's much more expensive than when you do innovation in an academic setting. Students come cheap, and failure has no cost. Whereas in the corporate world, if you fail in the innovation, that much effort is lost, that much money is lost. And when you work with the startups, basically the startups are funded by risk funding, venture funding, etc. And only those that succeed, you can then think of bringing it back inside. So the second one is R&D spend outside the organization. The third one, again, very, very important, it is percentage of revenue from new products, products that are introduced in the last 3 years or last 5 years. This measures how much the corporate is renewing itself on a continuous basis. So this three plus number of acquisitions you have done over the last few years. These four measures are very, very important. And I urge every board now to ask this question of executive management, the CEO, these four questions. Spend on R&D, spend on R&D outside the organization, percentage of revenue from new products, and acquisition of startups. These must now become part of how we measure the performance of a company. And I have now started talking in every CEO, every CII forum on leadership of an organization will come from its leadership in innovation, its leadership in R&D. Now, the role of startups, Nainad already talked about. Now, one of the ways in which a corporate can actually engage with the startup ecosystem is creating a, a venture fund, maybe an incubator or an accelerator within the corporate. And this is where the corporate venture capital as a tool, as a strategic tool, becomes very important. CII set up the Center for Excellence in Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Startup in Hyderabad as a national resource, and we have been helping organizations on their innovation journey. One of the ways in which they can actually participate the innovation ecosystem is by setting up a corporate venture capital arm. So this is a option that corporates are looking at. Now, how do you actually measure the success? How do you look at it actually? So this is the uh, mechanism the corporate uses to deploy risk capital. So you create an allocation from the treasury operations. Basically, treasury operations looks at investments of your uh, let's say extra income, etc., extra cash. And one of the ways you can deploy that is deploy it as a risk capital, typically as a minority investor into startups outside the organization. Now, CVC must have financial as well as strategic metrics. So anytime you deploy cash, you must expect financial returns commensurate with or better than returns you will get elsewhere. So it will have financial metrics as well as strategic metrics. That is where you will use innovation strategically for the growth of the organization. So a successful CVC operates with the dual mandate, balancing the need for innovation returns with the parent company's long-term strategic goals. CVC must also make sure that every startup is owned by a line department, especially if it's a strategic investment. So to realize the strategic value, that is, it has to be integrated as a product. We have to get market intelligence by working with startups, or sometimes the startup may be an acquisition target also. So the the startup must be, or the investment must be having a dedicated internal champion within the relevant line business. And last but not the least, the pace at which the startups work are typically very different from the pace at which a mature organization works, a organization that's established works. And this gives exposure to senior leadership in the organization on how you can work, in today's dynamically changing ecosystem, dynamically changing environment, whether with fast moving technology, whether deploying, for example, AI, etc. And how do you uh, you know create product releases that are uh, like on a daily basis if it's software, on a periodic basis if it's a manufactured product and things like that. And startups have this rhythm, which I strongly believe that organization can benefit from, senior leadership can learn from. And I've seen that some very good organizations deploy their senior leadership to work with startups, to understand how startups work, and that is a must for a senior leader to be considered as a CEO in the future. So that's a very good leadership training for senior leadership also. So all in all, uh, at the corporate level, you must have metrics to measure innovation. Where it's appropriate, uh, you must have a uh, innovation strategy, one of which should be setting up a corporate venture capital fund. And if it's a corporate venture capital fund, there must be financial goals as well as strategic goals. If it is strategic, it must be owned by a line department so that integration becomes very easy, simple. And last but not the least, this whole thing is very important for the country to transition to become an innovation led economy. If our own companies don't embrace this, the nation is going to not benefit from this. So, um, I strongly feel that every corporate must embrace the innovation agenda, must renew itself with new products and services. CII must champion this. Boards must ask these questions about the innovation that's happening in an organization. And if we embrace this, I strongly believe that our transition to become a developed economy will be faster. You know, we can become a $30 trillion economy over the next 25 years, Viksit Bharat, and we will have strong companies emerging out of India. I'm actually very optimistic about our own startups. I am an investor. Also, be full disclosure in, for example, Lenskart. Now, Lenskart uh, is now setting up manufacturing plants in India. Has become the largest producer of spectacles. They're innovating. They're now planning to release a uh, a uh, a glasses which are digital glasses and things like that. So this is an example of how one company in a very short period of time, of course they have done the IPO, very short period of time have actually created manufacturing in India, become one of the largest manufacturers of spectacles, has done an IPO. A great example of how our own companies can do these things in a very short period of time. So I will conclude at this point by reiterating that we need to embrace this innovation agenda. Corporate venture capital is a tool for embracing this agenda, and I hope that in today's uh, master class, every aspect of this will be gone into details, and some of you, where it's relevant, will actually uh, will get into how to do this, maybe start this in your own organization. And if you use financial and strategic tools, you will not lose out. So thank you very much, and over to you, Nainath. Back to you.
Thank you, Chris. That was truly delightful. I really loved your four metrics of measure. I'm going to write them down. Spending R&D inside the organization, outside the organization, percentage of revenue from new products and acquisition, and of course, the other part of startups. So we have 10 minutes, Chris. I'm not going to let go of this precious commodity of 10 minutes with you. So I am going to ask questions if people are going to warm up and ask questions. So uh, uh, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for Chris, please put it in the chat. I will take it up. We are not going to open up windows to ask questions, and that will be the format through the masterclass. So anytime you have any questions, just feel free to post it. So Chris, I'm going to ask very general questions because each of these sessions have very specific points they covered. Uh, I think there are in a lot of European countries and other countries very developed corporate venture capital. Some of them are even horizontal, as in they don't invest necessarily in startups connected to the company's products. Uh, what is the way to start here? In India, we have a lot of corporate innovation programs, not as many as venture capital. And of course, horizontal investment, I think, is little away. What is the kind of trajectory you see?
So I see in India now family offices um, starting a startup program. Some all had already have incubators, and these family offices also run the family business. It it will be better if it's strongly interconnected, and actually the the startup program resides within the company rather than in the family office,
Okay.
right? Because this is the way for corporate renewal, corporate innovation, and things like that. When the family office invests in startups, it's typically for financial goals, right? So strategic goals, it must actually sit within the corporate. I agree with you that we have not embraced this in a big way in India. But if you look at Cisco, Microsoft, Google, all of these people have now deployed their cash in supporting and investing in startups. Many of them actually, so for example, company like Cisco, Microsoft, it will encourage the startups to use their own products. So this is a way for them to increase their uh, sales, increase the network of companies that support their products, etc. So we need to learn from these things, with these uh, examples, and start our own. I see now some startups are going through this CVC route, though they don't call it CVC. What happens is they invest some money in a startup, so it's a strategic investment, and they uh, many a time acquire also. Growth through acquisition of startups is the way Facebook has grown, or Meta has grown where it is. Microsoft has grown to where it is. Cisco is a champion of acquisitions. Now we need to learn from those things, and more and more of our corporates also, I believe that should seriously look at corporate venture capital as a financial as well as strategic tool. In India, as I said, this resides in the family office rather than in the corporate, but we need to rethink that.
So there is an interesting question from Sushma Kaushik, and maybe you could provide some broad guidelines, not very specific, about ownership by BUs, business units, is a challenge. This whole aspect of culture and pace. If you have some quick kind of thoughts around that, because there are a lot of questions now flowing in. So, if you quickly tell me some thoughts around culture, business unit ownership, and the challenges of speed, culture, etc.
So integration of a startup into the corporate is the highest risk that you can see when a startup when you start looking at acquiring a startup. Integration is the biggest challenge because of the cultural difference, the pace of operation, especially as I already mentioned, corporate typically has a rhythm which is slower than how a startup would operate. Now, the reason why startups have to run like crazy is because they have to become successful before they run out of cash. Most startups fail because they run out of cash, right? So they run like crazy to become successful before they run out of cash, and that's the frantic pace at which the startups run. So that is the reason why you actually have the line um, departments work with these startups for a period of time, understand their culture, understand the pace at which they operate. You start maybe co-marketing the products, etc., with your own products, and then you know acquire and integrate. So you get enough time to understand the differences, maybe even prepare a playbook on how the integration will happen. The line ownership is very important. In the case of, at least some of the corporates in the US, like Microsoft, etc., have seen that the CEO of the startup becomes the CEO of a department in the parent company. So that way, the integration becomes very easy. It starts with the line owning, but then the line leader becomes a mentor, and the CEO of the startup becomes the head of the department. So there are various strategies that you can use to make sure that the integration goes through smoothly. But that's the biggest risk because of the differences in culture, the speed of operation, product differences, market differences, etc.
So I'm going to combine two questions. Krunal Kothari is asking, what is the single biggest mistake corporates make when launching a CVC arm? Single mistake they should avoid. And Manju Birla, I think a little provocative question, but nevertheless, I'll summarize it. She's saying that she's unable to get across to corporate venture capital so I think it's upon corporates to ensure that they have open arms to of communication with startups. But maybe some tips on what are the things, one tip or two tips on how, what are the things which corporates should avoid when doing a CVC. Um,
So, see, it's the CVC has to be very well thought out. You must create financial goals as well as strategic goals if you have strategic goals. Uh, and if you have strategic goals, you must, you know, identify department leader who will own that strategic goal. These are very, very important. These goals, and monitor these goals periodically to ensure that these goals are being met by the CVC. And the CFO typically will look at the financial goals because the CFO looks at how are you deploying your cash and things like that. Now, how do we get uh, uh, the CVC going? Now, it's not necessary that every corporate must do this. They can actually work with our CIES, Center for Excellence in Innovation, Entrepreneurship and Startups. So how they work is they ask the corporate actually to post some issues that they're facing or some new products that they would like to introduce, and scout around for startups that are working in this area. And CIS will set up meetings with these startups. So we'll filter out from our list of startups, they are all associate members of CIS, and we will scout out these startups and present them to you. You can start working. So you don't need to start a CVC to get engaged with startups. CIES can make this happen. We have a I think it's a Jayesh, you can correct me, 6-month program for engaging with startups. Step by step, we will take you through the whole process. We work with Forbes Marshall, we work with Adani Enterprises, we work with few of the large CII members on their innovation program, and we can help you with making uh, the initial steps, taking the initial steps on how to set up the CVC, etc. We can also connect you with the legal folks who can help you with this, the accounting folks, the CA firms that help you establish this, etc. Because this has to be thoughtfully done. We can help you with the internal metrics that can be used to measure. So all of these things we can help you with, and so you can actually, you know, learn from the experts on how to make this indeed happen. We will connect you with organizations that are already running CVCs, so you get all this knowledge before you start this.
Okay, we are close to running out of time, but Chris, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
just a quick 1 minute response to this person Tanai Seth has asked. Would you recommend CVC investing in areas outside of their core business? Just a quick response.
Yes. See, this is how you enter a new area,
Okay.
right? So again, it has to be thoughtfully done, or suddenly it opens your eyes on a possibility, right? So yes, you should think about it. And in India, especially, family-run businesses are conglomerates working in multiple business areas anyway, sometimes not related to each other. So yes, that's definitely a possibility.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We have got a lot more questions than I expected. Keep them going through the morning session. If you have a question anytime, please post it in the chat. Thank you, Chris. I know
No,
you.
Tanad, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. And as I said, if there are questions which you feel should be answered, if they send it to me or to Jayesh, we will answer them, through email or maybe a separate session, etc. And thank you everyone for participating. This interest, I see about 122 participants right now. This interest, is very, very encouraging, and this is what is needed to transition to become Viksit Bharat. Thank you very much, everyone.
Chris,
Bye.
there are probably 100, 150 more, which will
Okay.
be there on the Icon platform. So,
Okay.
300,
Okay.
400 attending. So,
Fantastic. Really, really good.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll collate the questions and send it to Jayesh and Priyanka, and they will send it to you. But
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
thank you for
Bye.
joining despite your travel and all the schedules. We are truly
Now,
delighted.
I'm very happy that the link held up.
Yeah, so internet is not bad in a remote place also in India. But thank
Kohima. Kohima.
Kohima. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
thank you, Chris, again. Thank you.
Bye.
So with that kickoff by Chris with his keynote, I do hope all of you enjoyed his thoughts, and I was taking some furious notes with a lot of insights, deep insights. We'll move on to our first session, and we have my good friend and co-chair of CII West Indian Subcommittee on Startups and Entrepreneurship, Ravi Sabnavis. He's going to moderate a panel discussion on CVC structures, returns, and strategic alignment. But just a reminder of what Chris mentioned, you should please connect with folks from CII CIES. CIS folks already there. Jayesh is there. You can write to him separately on the chat, and it has a lot to offer. So with that, over to you, Ravi.
Thank
You
you.
have 45 minutes, 10:45. We'll stop and move on to the next session. And good to see all of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ninad. And, morning to you all, to our audience and, to, the panelists this morning. I was just thinking, I anyway had the difficult task of starting the first session. I think this becomes even more onerous given that I'm following, Chris Gopalakrishnan. right? But nevertheless, I think this is a good starting point actually, because he set the ground, on CVC and how organizations should, sort of set it up and how to drive it through. And to introduce our panelists for today, Rishi Shroff. Hi, Rishi. Uh,
Hi.
He's with Rishi currently leads the JSW New Age, which is the strategic investment arm of the JSW Group, which is focused on driving innovation and long-term, strategic value creation. And Rishi, I'm sure you'll talk more about it, but I believe you guys invest in cutting edge technology-led companies, that enhance efficiency and sustainability and so on. Rishi is also a lawyer by training, right? Our second guest is Tejas. Hi, Tejas.
Hi, morning.
Tejas is part of, Nova, which is the corporate ventures team at Saint-Gobain. And Tejas leads startup collaborations and investments in India. Mechanical engineer with, I think 17 years of experience in R&D, product management, and strategy. And I think what he shares in common with Rishi is both are Bangalore boys, if I'm correct, right? One from Baldwin Boys and the other from Malyaditi, right? Our third panelist is Sriharsha. I wasn't sure if I should start by, creating some disruption, saying Sriharsha is a passionate, theater actor and director. Uh, I'm sure there will be some insights this morning. But I think as part of his day job, Harsha leads the corporate venture arm at Somani Impresa Group, the SIG Tatva,
Yep.
driving investments that end up embed startups into real industry context. And we'll talk, a lot about that. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. I think a good place to start is perhaps, where Chris left off. I think the time is now for CVC. That's something pretty well established. What I wanted to ask you all, and perhaps we could start with Rishi, is for each of your organizations, right? What was the trigger or the thought behind firstly setting up the CVC arm, and then doing the investments that you've done?
Perfect. No, thanks very much. I think Mr. Ravikant and Tejas and Shiharsha, great to be here. And I think I managed to listen to a little bit of what Mr. Gopal Krishnan had to say, and I think some of what it is, is absolutely well summarized. So I think it was a great way for him to begin. Let me quickly give you a background on exactly what you asked, Ravikant. How have we thought about it, and what was the birth of it? I think so. JSW, obviously, some of you might be familiar. It's steel, cement, paint, sports, infra, energy, several core industry businesses, and now defense and some other new age businesses. The birth really was that we started getting a lot of funds, financial sponsors who were making investments in, let's say, Series A, Series B startups, who came to us to say, listen, this company looks really exciting, and then they say that you're a very big customer, or you know them well, or can you validate what they are doing, and so we said, okay, we'd happy to introduce. So we used to organize visits for people to go to the plants, people to check out, and there were 3 4 options. People chose this business over another business, and so on and so forth. So we really felt that, can you put structure to that, because we are validating stuff that we know. We've chosen this startup over 3 other peers because their tech is better, or their platform is better, they're cheaper, they're more nimble, and stuff like that. So really the birth was organic. First, a few family office deals we did just because it made sense, but then we said we should put structure to it. And I'm happy, maybe Ravikant, on the next question, to give you a little bit of how we are doing it. But really that's the start, and I think that was the organic way. We've been now doing it for about 2 years. And it started just like that that why wouldn't we also participate when we are validating companies for others. uh,
That's interesting. I think your starting point is that we are potentially validating companies for others, for other investors, and that's how you started. Harsha, would you like to take the same
Yeah,
question?
sure, sure. So even for us, there are part areas that were similar in nature. See, we were always investing through the family office here and there, but as you understand, family offices investments are generally mixed. It would have multiple asset classes. One of those asset classes would be something like open innovation and all. So all of this really changed when Shashwat Somani, who is now the third generation promoter, came in and he started looking at. He had completed his MBA and he had just come back. And CVCs he saw were a very important element in how the whole transformative journey happens for an organization. And for us, it was more so we are. So Somani Impresa Group, just to give you a perspective, we are India's largest sanitary ware player. So Hindware is one of the groups that we have. We are also the largest glass container manufacturers. So AGI Greenpack is our group company. So while we are competing we are in the top five global players in the glass containers. So when you would look at a player who is like in Owen, Illinois, who's globally the largest, and you would say the way they are looking at innovation is very proactive in nature. So they had created a glass which was very specific, very strong, and they had partnered with a university, the University of Pennsylvania. And when you look at back home in India, players or the R&D, it is still very reactive in nature. We would look at something which is strong and selling, and this is the reason we would jump and try to replicate it. So we thought that we should change this game. We should also be the forefront of innovation, and that's why we wanted to get the whole open innovation space working towards this whole piece. That's why we said let's formalize the CVC arm. It has just been close to a year now that we have been running it, down five investments, but that was a direction that there has to be strategic fitment that aligns to us, and that's how we started this whole CVC arm. So it's a good direction in terms of the innovation that is now coming in. And yeah, briefly, that's how we are.
Awesome, thanks. And Tejas, I think I read that you are probably amongst the first or the first person, to be joining this team and to lead this team in India. Is that correct?
That's right, Ravi. So Nova is the corporate venture arm at Saint-Gobain, and till about 2.5 years ago, it didn't have a presence in India. So I sort of brought the CVC function to India, where I now lead the CVC function across India.
Oh, that's good. And could you tell us, again, going back to the question that Rishi and Harsha spoke about, what was the starting point for Saint-Gobain to set up Nova and, start CVC?
Sure. So many of you may know Saint-Gobain as a glass company. We all remember the ads from the 90s and the 2000s. But Saint-Gobain is a 360-year-old French company, which we do a lot of glass, not the container side, but architectural glass. But we do a whole lot more. Yeah, we're a construction materials company. We have plasterboards and tile adhesives and whole lot of products. So Nova started life in 2006 purely as an external collaborations team, and it stayed that way for about 10 years, right? So purely looking at who can we collaborate with, exactly what Mr. Gopalakrishnan talked about. Are there colleagues in academia who could be partners in progress type? And 2016 was sort of a turning point where we looked at the entire ecosystem and said, we took a step back and said, there really is more value to be had and offered by shifting to a CVC model. So that's when we pivoted to sort of a CVC model. And since 2016 is when the formalized version of Nova took birth, but 2018 is when we actually started investing. So since 2018, we've now built up a portfolio of about 56 companies, mostly focused in the US and Europe, some in Asia. In India, we've invested in two startups. One is Lipspace. The other is a smaller startup called Twasta. They make 3D printed concrete structure. So two very different startups that we invested in, but really interesting for us from a business perspective. We share a lot of adjacencies. So we look at it more as a return on innovation rather than a return on investment. I know we'll get to these questions, but I'm just sort of preempting it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the story.
And I think probably we should talk about Rishi. You were going to talk about the categories that you guys are in. But
Yeah.
before you start, just a reminder, to our audience that please keep the questions coming in. There were a hell of a lot of them, in the previous session in the opener with Chris. So just keep them coming, and we'll pick them up along the way. Rishi, over to you.
Yeah. So thanks. I think it's important to just tell you how we do the investments. So sort of the context is clear. So we don't try and do investing that results in M&A. That's not the goal. The goal is to take very, very small stakes, put in some money, and really help a good founder or founding team to do what they do best, right? So the risk with a CVC is, if let's say today a JSW to invest in an industrial manufacturing startup, the founder can easily feel that, oh God, I've been taken over so early in my journey, and that's not the goal. So our goal is that, can you do a small check? So we do between 5 to 10 crores, not usually more than 10 crores. And we say we don't take any rights, we're not trying to have anything special. We just want to create an ecosystem where that startup benefits from all the opportunity we have. So, for example, we are about 42 plant locations all over India, a couple outside India. So if a startup, let me take the example of one of our first deals for infinite uptime. They do IoT chips, and those chips are stuck on our machinery and can predict downtime basis vibrations. Now, they were present in a couple of our plants, and basis our investment, we've hopefully unlocked more opportunity for them within the group, because it's so core to our operating system, right? So the thumb rule we try and keep in mind is, we don't want to do deals that are nice to have or that can give substantial financial return, because that's not the primary goal. The goal is it really hitting the business top line, bottom line, or some core strategic value? These parameters, then we're happy to look at it. And I think that philosophy has worked, because our skill is in validating that Mr. Ravikant is what he's building is really, really good for business, because we are using it, right? And such a startup has gone through our entire purchase process. So the whole commercial team has sort of squeezed and sort of realized what is the value, and so on and so forth. So it's really trying to be real investing in startups that are relevant to us. Ravikant, in terms of areas, like I mentioned, so we are obviously in India's largest steel producer. So steel, cement, paint, energy, infrastructure. These are the listed entities. And then we also now, obviously, I said, do some sports, some defense,
Yes.
and some other new areas. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I mean, I'm very familiar with what
Sure.
all you do, including sports, and I've personally interacted with some of the folks in the sports arm.
Sure.
My question was more on the categories of the startups that
Understood. Got it.
you've
Got it. I think
invested in.
just so really manufacturing tech would be the core focus. Anything that affects, because that is really what hits my top line or bottom line deeply. So, for example, any technology that sort of aids the process, makes the process more efficient, greener, cheaper, any of those kinds of areas. Because of us being a large group, even on the financial side, anything on the PRPO side, financial account side, we've also looked at one or two HR startups. So imagine anything that is affecting the group's business ecosystem. We are that way quite agnostic, and we are quite flexible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And Tejas, again, if I know LiveSpace is one, and I think a thread that I found is that there is obviously some synchronization between the category that your company operates in and the startups. There is some adjacency to that to that extent. Um, do you also, and this question is open to either Harsha or Tejas, that do you also look at categories that have no relation to the industry that you are all operating in?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, when we started in India about 2 years ago, AI was still nascent, earlier stage than it is today. But I mean, we looked at a couple of AI startups as well, and it opened up avenues for us. And happy to report that we now engage with an AI startup in Bangalore. Still in the works, but it's very interesting, the kind of use case that we were able to identify with this. As a traditional construction materials tech company, we thought, what would we find in AI? Apart from, let's say, what Autodesk or someone like that is doing, looking at AI-based building information modeling and those sort of things.
Oh, that's
But
very interesting. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
you were saying something.
so it offers us an opportunity to look at adjacencies and look at what's there beyond, because um, our internal R&D teams tend to have sort of blinders on, and they have like focus areas. So as a CVC team, we're in a unique position to look outside and say, hey, this could be of interest to us. This could be something that we could do a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, and we should keep an eye out on it.
Okay. Harsha,
Yeah.
if another question, the basic CVC structures, are vary quite widely, right? They could be, let's say, more balance sheet investing focused or fund of funds and so on and so forth. In your experience, which of these structures aligns best with, both a strategic intent, because I think all three of you spoke about that, as well as, financial discipline and, your best chance at a good return on investment or even
Yeah.
return on innovation.
Sure, sure. So I would say I think most of it in whatever we look at this is also how the thesis is written for that particular CVC. So even on the earlier question when I was listening, both the OGs, both of them have a very diverse set in terms of how they look at startups. And if you look at this, this is also a thesis question. So when we were doing this, we were very clear that our primary focus would be strategic adjacency. And then in the future, if we have to move forward, that would be a later stage. On this one also specifically, if I had to point out, we were very clear that we will do a balance sheet investing, because if we had to do only a fund of funds or that kind of a strategy, that is something that can always be driven through the family office. We still do invest in funds and also in fund of funds, but that goes more like an investment ticket from the family office, which happens in parallel. Here we wanted to be very hands-on. So even when we started this, there were a lot of firms which had come and said that they can set up this piece for us and run this or invest on our behalf. But we were very clear that this knowledge had to be very vicarious in the way we are going to pick up. So the startups that we have worked at, initially we looked at what was the problem statement internally. So we realized that there was a big leakage in Hindware when the final buying happens, because somebody would move to a shop keeper who would give them line of credit. So we realized that marketplace was a piece which was missing and line of credit which was missing. So invested in a company called as MOB. This would not have come directly if we were not doing the investment from the balance sheet directly in the startup. Also, as Rishi pointed out about infinite uptime, we realized that we are 13 manufacturing units and we do a 2 ml vial to almost a 5 liter jar. And whenever this movement was happening, you would lose 8 to 10 hours because of the parameter changes, because glass is very specific. Tejas would agree with me on that. So those kind of issues we could only work out when we worked with a digital twin startup, an IIT Madras incubated Creon, similar to what an infinite uptime does in so many places, but specific to a thermodynamic action. So this kind of a thesis comes in when you are hands-on investing and looking at them in real time. So that's why for us the balance sheet approach, at least on the CVC side, is more pertinent. The funding part or the fund of funds is still taken care by a family office, which has less board oversight, less direction in that sense.
Okay. And, Rishi, this is for you. As you guys have gone about investing, clearly, JSW as a group and even the individual companies within them are well-established companies with processes and, and so
Sure.
on and so forth. On the other hand, the startups that you're all investing in are startups.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, given my own experience both in established companies and startups, they are the absolute, antithesis to
Yeah.
companies such as yours.
Yeah.
So, what are the issues that you may have faced, be it governance, be it speed, sometimes there are trade-offs between the two.
Yeah. No, I think so. The answer to that is, first, we would not do very, very early companies, right? We would do stuff that has some definitely product market fit, definitely has the capacity to work with us, right? So that, for example, security stuff, basic structure, so we wouldn't do that early, right? So I think before Series A is hard. But on the flip side, from our perspective, even such a company, all the points, Ravikant, that you mentioned are absolutely true. So what we try and do, and we are testing this out, this is still something new, but we are starting to see success, is that we tell our procurement teams and our commercial teams that for any order that you give, can you please also consider a startup in that area, right? And so what that does is, let's say, for example, we are doing something where we are considering, Siemens and IBM and three others, right? And we can also say, okay, we make it mandatory for the commercial folks to consider a startup in the area. What happens, and we've seen, is that the commercial folks sometimes, are like pleasantly surprised at what they've seen because of the innovation and the capability. So if a startup is really good and demonstrates capability that we've otherwise not seen, then suddenly I think many of these other logistics sort of collapse or at least disappear, and the opportunity is created. So it's a bit of a couple of factors.
Right. And Tejas, is the approach at Saint-Gobain any different? Also, what I was keeping in at the back of my mind is, s- while Somani and JSW are Indian companies well established here for years, right? On the other hand, Saint-Gobain is essentially a European company that's come in, so there could be other issues as well while you're investing in Indian startups. So would you like to talk about that?
So, as a strategic investor, the investment is done by the BU in the region. So, from day one, there is a very strong sort of a driving force. There's an internal champion. There's a full buy-in from a business, and there's a clear, not a clear roadmap, but at least a clear path forward. Right? There's someone inside the organization that will join hands with the startup and make things work. We learned this from experience. If you just introduce a startup to a bunch of people inside the organization, what happens is they will float around aimlessly, and then they get frustrated and they say, no,
Yeah.
this is not happening, right? So we sort of tweak that model year on year. One of the sort of mistakes that we also learned from is being very transactional. I think Mr. Gopalakrishnan also spoke about this earlier. We sort of have evolved from that transactional model to more of a partners in progress type model, where we work with the startup and say that, okay, we're doing this, you're doing this. Can we put 1+1 and build more than 2? Can we make it 1+1 equal to 3 type thing, right? So it's the idea is, and the startups also, they don't come to a CVC because they need the funds, right? There's a lot of high quality VC and PE money that's available to them. They come to a CVC because they know that we will hold hands with them and help them scale, right? And in a way validate the solution that they're bringing to the table.
Okay. And Harsha, do you see yourself at odds with the way that you all operate as a company, right? Which is process driven, been around for years, and everything is set to the moment you invest in a startup, they're operating probably at a much faster pace. So how do you balance out yourself between the speed at which you're used to operating and the speed with which the startup needs to operate to succeed? Right? It's not about the fact that they're trigger happy necessarily, but to be able to continuously innovate and grow and scale up, they need to probably operate much faster than what large companies such as yours need to operate. So how do you reconcile that, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's a myth or if it is what we are experiencing, because generally the overall perception, and I have been saying this at multiple forums, that we always think that corporates work slow, right? But the fact is that if corporates were working slow, things would not have. We have Rishi, Tejas, so these conglomerates are not built overnight. So there's a lot of churn that happens behind the scenes that people do not understand. What is beautiful is when a startup walks into our door and when our BU teams sit in, there is on both the sides, obviously different paces, but we come in between. So the CVC arm acts as a facilitator which tries to adjust both the paces together. And what we have seen beautifully in most of these times is that once that happens, the BU surprises more than the way startup surprises. So the internal business units, because if you see, there's a very healthy competition that has now suddenly jumped into this whole landscape, wherein if we do not keep up pace with the startups, the BUs, which are themselves bustling with ideas. So what happens when a startup comes in, and when a CVC also looks at this with this whole lens, the bureaucracy at so many levels gets cut down, because it's a very top-down thing. Imagine if Rishi is directly overlooking, or for us, if Shashwat is overlooking, the scrutiny is very direct. So if something is not moving, it gets directly moved to the table. So because of that, I think for us, the speed is very fast, and we have done kind of things that we otherwise would have earlier in my earlier avatar when we were expanding. I was earlier part of the corporate strategy and new business development. Would get in a new. So I have myself seen what pace are you talking about, but that has completely changed. So I think CVCs are those transitioning amethysts in this whole piece, which actually change the way things happen.
Sure. Thanks. And I'll this stage I'll pick up a question from the audience from Anindya Sengupta. What would be the typical metrics to assess the impact and performance, of a CVC arm, and how is this different from forming a corporate incubation or an acceleration center? So, Rishi, would you like to
Yeah. So I
take?
think for us also, we, like Shirsha mentioned, we are on balance sheet, and the primary, if not the only goal, is to create value for the group in a non-equity return perspective. It means that's an extra. It means if I were to make, I don't know, whatever IRR, there would be a pat on the back, but not really the goal, right? The goal is value for the business, some strategic value, or some core method improvement, or something green, that kind of thing. So for us, if I invest in something, and then that I can unlock value for the group by making them have more presence, or giving them access to something which the group didn't have, that's really what we are measured on. So for us, it's core strategy, and return is secondary. Means I don't think and we've structured it like that. We are not putting in large checks, right? We're not putting in checks that are likely to say, okay, this was sunk money, etc. We're doing it really, if I can say it, even to catalyze our folks internally, to sort of give good sort of credence, and good time, and good consideration to new age companies.
And at what time, what's the longest that you remain invested in a startup? Do you exit,
We,
and have you done any?
no rules. We're very patient on that. Also, we are happy to. I mean, that's the benefit, right, of not being a fund structure. I mean, I've never had a conversation of exit yet, with anywhere that we've looked at or we've put in money.
Okay. One thing that I'm very keen to, get out of all three of you is, and especially since the subject is structures, returns, and strategic alignment, I want any of you to talk about the returns, but we'll come to the financial or strategic returns later. As much as I'm keen to know, how the journey has been, let's say over a 3-year or 4-year period, with a startup, and how you've helped shape your organizations, have helped scale it up to whatever extent. And
Maybe
you
I
also
can take
spoke
this.
about being patient, right? So that's patient capital. You're looking at strategic, Rishi.
Yeah.
So, do you have a, startup story that, you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's early days. I can give you some examples of what we've done. It may not be branded as New Age, but we've sort of done family office deals of the similar nature. I think without getting into naming the company,
Sure.
we found there was for some period, if you remember, the ESG mandate was very strong, and so we felt as a corporate, we must really participate with someone who has knowledge. And so we invested in a small ESG consulting firm, and the work that they did was tremendous. To come into each of our businesses and to really give us a strategy, sort of tell us what global standards are. So that one stands out. That was about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Obviously, it was a service business, so exit and things like that were not the primary consideration, and the business is still doing very well. Some of the companies that we've done in the new age sort of umbrella over the last 18 months, I would say, it's now, the pressure is on us to sort of deliver some of what can we really unlock the value that we've promised them, and also can our group sort of give them that opportunity. So I would say that those are early. I'm saying we're seeing a lot of traction. I think, to Shihasha's point of being able to open doors, absolutely means the group is growing exponentially very quickly. I would not be able to say that it's slow or sluggish, and we take the startups with us. So there, I think, opportunity to walk into any plant. So for example, we've just for a company that we are evaluating, we've sort of told them that, listen, you pick the lowest hanging fruit. Our ecosystem. You tell us which business you want to try, and immediately open access. My team took the startup to that venue, and they've started work. So that's really what we are trying to do. I mean, I would love to hear what others feel on the same question, sir.
Maybe I can add to that. So what we do is we come across so many interesting, good startups with great founders, great ideas. We're not able to invest in every single one of them, right? So to tackle this, we set up what we call the Open Innovation Program, where every year we run a cohort. We work with, let's say, a scouting partner, and we like we do with CIES. We have a bunch of challenge statements and say, okay, this is what we're looking at. Are there a great set of startups that we can work with? And we work with them on a 4 to 6 month proof of concept project, after which they then sort of take it up with the business unit, and then they run along with it. It's been sort of a learning journey, and we realized that there's no dream startup out there who's going to solve exactly what we need. Like, we really have to work with them and see what's possible, and be flexible. And also bring in a bit of a flavor of what kind of business problems are we solving. Are we really looking at only insourcing innovation from a technical perspective, or are we looking at new business models? Are we looking to access new geographies, new markets? What kind of customer insights can we get by working with a startup? These are some of the things that have really helped us in our journey as well.
Harsha, yourself?
Yeah, see, I think the question, I just go back to the question. So obviously we are just an year-old piece. So, but internally, I think we are very clear that we are not squaring off our positions. Patient capital, as Rishi spoke about, I think that is the core. We have put in money. In fact, our focus is to grow the company. So this acts as one of the other companies that have now come into our fore. And you should speak to our founders, and they would tell you that we are running it as very strong operators in this mix. So we are not only opening doors internally. In fact, I'm getting ideas to speak to Rishi and Tejas on some of my startups as we end this later on. But the whole piece is how we can help them grow and expand, which otherwise would have been very difficult for them. And even at a governance level, see, when you are an operator-led piece, so internally also we speak to them almost every second day. And then at a BU level, we have weekly meetings, and also at a top-down level, even at a board level, we have a quarterly level of an update with them. So everybody is very glued on to this startup at different phases. Hence the speed as well as the thing. But as I believe that the whole idea, while investing in these different startup stages, has done 56. So you see, we are not going out, or the idea is not to quickly now do a secondary or leave it and all. The idea is how we can get more in terms of fighting with our competition in the open market. That's the only intent that with which we have been looking at this piece.
That's interesting. I'm seeing a common thread of, and I'm so glad to hear that, which sort of sets you all apart from traditional VCs, the strategic intent, and how you can grow along with them, right? We have a question from Dr. Jagdish Daler, and I think this is from a perspective of advice for himself. He says they're a startup. They offer value to customers marginal to core productization in the B2B space. But when we are scaling up on a global model, what are the considerations or suggestions that any of you may have for startups in terms of a business model or technology? I think essentially what he's saying is the company is called VNIR Biotech. So just to repeat the question, they offer value to customers in the B2B space. And when we are scaling up on a global model, any advice?
I'd say
It's a
lead
little
with tech.
broad, but happy to take any advice from you guys.
Sure, I'd say lead with tech because you can play around with different business model. If it doesn't work, you can change it. But as long as you're developing good tech that's really making an impact, making a difference, business models can change. You can tweak it and find something that works eventually.
Okay. Rishi, I think your mention of the ESG has triggered off two questions.
Yes.
One, of course, I think is very specific from Abhishek Chandak, who says, would you be interested in a tech platform / product-led ESG consulting, startup? And the second one from Anuj Bishnoi, refers to what you briefly spoke about and said, could you throw more light?
Yeah. No, I think if the first one, absolutely. Please drop me a line. Happy to look at it. I think some of the best companies have come through a random LinkedIn message. So please do reach out. I think, just this example, I think it is some time old, Anuj, but I feel that there was a time 4 5 years ago where people were saying, okay, this is something we must do, and this is something that we must build into our core DNA of our group. And especially industries that we are in, which are core manufacturing, traditionally say, not the most environment sort of friendly. So it was stuff that, and now we've sort of integrated it, right? So now it is okay. Some of this, is become mainstream and we've understood what we need to do on each of the areas. So I think the opportunity there was, and this is systemic of startups in general, is that they perhaps catch opportunities and can be nimble faster than in just building out something, not in terms of realizing what is going on, but in actually putting putting something out there. So the benefit that this company had was they were just doing something that otherwise we had not seen, and it was core and linked to us and in our goals. Our board was asking in several of our businesses, listen, what are we doing about it? One of the suggestions at the board level was, should we start our own ESG fund? And so it was a little bit of timing, but it was also a little bit of having something that we've not seen. So that's really this story, but I think you can extrapolate some of these to other areas as well.
Sure. Thanks. Harsha, you mentioned, you all have been relatively new compared to, Rishi and Tejas in terms of this space. So I think two questions, and, the others could sort of chip in, which is in terms of, you all spoke about a strategic fit. I'm talking about the point where you're evaluating a startup to invest in, right? And what are the criteria you apply? The common thread, of course, which all of you mentioned, is a strategic fit, and that sort of is clearly a number one. But more because you're relatively new at it, it's about a year or so. What does it really mean in your CVC? So is it adjacency? Is it disruption? Or is it a future white space for you all, or something else? If you can talk about that.
Sure. So, Ravikant, I think, sorry, we were very clear at the thesis level that there are three core themes that we have to attack, and and all of these goes one by one. So the first one is obviously strategic return, because we realized that the most important piece for us was defending the core. So what it would mean is all the businesses that we were doing in, how do we make sure that we are not behind competition or not behind the ecosystem in terms of whatever newer innovations are happening in. So that was the first piece that we picked it. So in terms of priority also, that is the most important. The second piece is looking at adjacencies. So Hindware historically was a sanitary ware company, but we are now India's largest glass container manufacturer as well. We are also into chimneys. So we are also into water heaters. So these are the areas which, even as Chris was speaking earlier, conglomerates continue to become conglomerates by opening or entering into areas which are not their core in a way. So there are certain adjacencies, certain non-adjacencies. So that is something that we keep an eye on, but that is a phase two for us or a second priority for us. And the third one, because irrespective there's capital involved, so comes the financial returns. So when we say financial returns, these financial returns might not come from buying at a particular point and then leaving. These might also come by growing these companies. So that is how we look at these three priorities. Although we are early, but we have studied a lot of these companies out there. In fact, so if you see somebody like both JSW and Saint Gobain Nova, these are case studies that we have mulled over internally multiple times. And not only them, but globally. Nova is a global case study. Like everywhere you read about them, you look at books, these are proven things that they have been doing. And when you look at benchmarks like these, we prepared our thesis on these lines. And I think even as we progress, this is something that will continue to be our Bible in terms of how we are going to fight in this market.
Okay. And, what I'd like you to speak about is, as these startups are, growing and you're spending time, what's the review mechanism that each of you have with them? Right? What parameters do you measure? I mean, we of course spoke at a broader level about a strategic fit, and that's why you get into it in the first place. But when you hit the ground with a startup, right? How do you measure them? And how different is it from, because I would reckon it's different from the way you measure your own existing business, right? And how often do
Um,
you do that?
Sure. I think it's very similar to how we measure our R&D milestones. So every year, we have a quarterly review with the startup, but we also have an annual review. What went right, what didn't, what can be changed, what would we like to do, right? So it's always about pushing the needle forward, and this also sets us up to evaluate follow-on investment opportunities, right? So um, does it really make sense for us to follow on our initial investment, double down on investment in a startup that we really believe in? Or do we show our trust in the startup by continuing to work with them, continuing to collaborate? These are some things that we look at. So we've passed up on some follow-on investments, but we still work very closely with these startups.
Okay. We have 2 minutes left, and I'm going to be a little ambitious and try and squeeze in two questions. I think, the best of CVCs try and avoid the trap of becoming traditional, VCs. So how is it that you guys, ensure that your investment decisions are sort of stay anchored the way you started, to your corporate strategy?
Should I take that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I give you an example. I was my team and I were evaluating a startup, very, very excited. Means by the end of the meeting, I was like, oh my God, this is the next big thing. And I created a meeting thereafter with our business guy, right? The person who was actually going to use this, right? And he tore them apart, right? He said that, listen, this is absolutely, and then I realized that this ivory tower of IRR and deck may not always work, and we need to do that validation. So the answer to your question is that we would finally, I need some business teams to tell me that, listen, this makes sense, and why it makes sense, and that keeps it real for us. Otherwise, it's very easy to get caught up in Excel, and to make investments on that basis.
Okay, one last question, and this is for Harsha because he's the newest. Your top two mistakes to avoid, your advice on the top two mistakes to avoid for somebody who is getting into CVC now, today.
Oh, I think the biggest mistake that people do, or maybe just analyze it at a pitch deck level, not actually think that at least at the CVC level, because we have the strength of doing a hardcore POC first. So somebody who just looks at them, reads about them, compares and invests, I think that is something that should definitely not be done. Because we have this whole piece of people and BUs who can primarily help and do a POC. And the second mistake, and I'm trying hard, but I would still say that just do it. Not doing it is the biggest mistake, I would say, because this is how globally things are moving. So if you do not do and you want to stay safe, this is not going to work. Yeah.
Thanks very much. And before I end, there's Deepal Shah who has requested for the mail ID of Rishi Shroff. We'll get that to him, I guess, Nina. We'll ensure your business mail ID goes to Deepal. Rishi, Tejas, and Harsha, thank you ever so much. This was a truly awesome session, and I hope our audience enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
Ravi.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Rishi, Tejas, and
Thank you.
Harsha for sharing your thoughts. Great work, Ravi, to be on time. I hope all the other sessions and the moderators have joined will also follow this example, but good work. We'll move on to our next session where Tarana is going to moderate the session on Inside a CVC Playbook, Sourcing to Scaling Startup Bets. I think it's a very important topic, and we are delighted Tarana is going to moderate this
Thanks.
interesting session. Over to you, Tarana. 11:30 is the hard stop. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes. Hi. Thank you, everyone. Hi, Ayappan. I'm pronouncing your name Ayappa, correct?
Yes, I am perfect.
Hi, thanks. Good to connect with you guys. To start off, I think I'll just introduce you both and a little about what CVC is. I'm assuming some of the audience is familiar. I didn't realize we were the first panel. So just quickly, what I mean, at least my understanding of CVC is, and you guys can maybe help correct some of the misnomers. Corporate venture capital is where companies invest in startups not just for financial returns, but to stay ahead in disruption, access to new technologies, and build strategic optionality for the companies. And we've seen this a lot globally with the large conglomerates, and in recent days with Microsoft, Google, everyone sort of being at the edge with AI. And in India also, we've sort of seen in the last 5 to 7 years large groups such as Reliance, Tata, the Aditya Birla, Mahindras, Marico, Wipro, along with other, sort of also looking at a lot at CVC, or rather corporate ventures in India. So from that, I'd love to understand from, to introduce you guys and understand how CVC plays a role today. So quick intro. Ayappa has over 15 years of experience spanning consulting, retail, e-commerce, and sales. He was the founder of Bamboo Tribe, a consumer brand in sustainability, and showcases his commitment to a greener future through that. His illustrious career includes pivotal roles at renowned companies like Cognizant, Samsung, and Xiaomi, where he played a key role in driving success. Notably, Ayappa spearheaded strategic initiatives at Your Story, collaborating closely with startup founders, investors, and enablers within the ecosystem. He currently manages a flagship accelerator program at REAP, which has built a portfolio of over 85 startups in the last 9 years. Avnish is a global leader with over 33 years of experience driving revenue growth and market leadership through his digital transformation, innovation management, ecosystem building, enterprise reinvention, strategic investments, M&A, and new venture creation. He has been heading Accenture Venture since 2015 and was awarded the most innovative corporate leader in 2018, 21, and 25. Wow, that's quite an accomplishment. So just diving into the topic, given that we have 45 minutes or maybe 40 minutes, would be helpful to understand from you both, how do you define the role of corporate venture capital today? Is it primarily strategic, financial, or some sort of a hybrid model? Whoever wants to go first.
Anish, you want to take that first? I'll follow you.
All right. Okay. So good morning, everybody. And thanks for the question here. So let me just explain to you, what are the different kinds of frameworks which are available for a corporate to address innovation and disruption, and the different technologies which are emerging, right? So, and it is all based on the time you have. So let's start with the shortest time. If you want to add capabilities to your organization and the time is very short, then you start with something called merger and acquisitions. For example, Accenture, is a serial acquirer, and the reason why we acquire companies is that we want to compress innovation and compress the timelines in terms of how we build capability, for example, nowadays in autonomous and agentic AI, right? So the time is not there, and that's why we do M&A. And then as you start going towards the right in terms of time becoming a little more, you get into joint ventures and partnerships, you get into research and development, you start building innovation labs, you start getting into incubators and accelerators. And finally, when you have enough time and you are looking at the future, then you start looking at corporate venture capital, right? So that corporate venture capital is basically to look into the capabilities which you require in the future and making sure that you are investing in the future today. Right?
Got it.
And CVC has evolved into a strategic financial hybrid, but I think it's increasingly with strategic intelligence at the core. The difference between CVC and VC is that the CVC is much more strategic, which means that we are patient investors. And for us, the purpose is not just generating financial returns. It is acquiring future capabilities before they become mainstream, right? And that's very important. It is for shaping market direction and, in our case, positioning Accenture at the intersection of emerging technologies and enterprise demand. So yeah, that would be my opening comment in terms of what CVC is, why do we do it, and it is definitely tilted towards strategic.
Got it. Anything you'd like to add, Ayap, to this?
Yeah, I
or-
think just a quick add-on is that I think it's great that Avnish has been a veteran in the space and who we've also at REAP worked with in the past. Nirupa's worked with the Accenture team. I think we are great contrasts to one another because, like Avnish said, we are on the other end of the spectrum. We are on the spectrum of having an in-house accelerator that we've run at the Brigade Group for the last 9 years, entering our 10th year right now.
Okay.
And we've gone the more time way and are now going up the pyramid, if I may use that word to say that we've now done corporate VC, we've done a few investments from our balance sheets. We've also created our own Cat 2 AI fund called the Earth Fund in partnership with Gruhas. So we've actually gone up the other way. And I don't know if we're lucky or unlucky, but we're in an industry which is in the real estate space, which is a slightly more old school industry, if I may say so, which is more capex heavy. And for us, the interesting part was there are no other players in the space. And even today, there are very few other people. So I think Nirupa Shankar, the joint managing director of the Brigade Group, who started REAP, her vision has always been that REAP as an accelerator for the entire real estate industry. So unlike other CVCs, our slight difference is that we work with all developers. While the Brigade Group company, we work with any of the developers in the country, any infra players in the country, including Tejas, who was on the previous panel from St. Gobain, and Harsha from Hindware also we've interacted with. But I think our slight difference is that we are a more industry-focused accelerator, not only a company-focused.
Okay. No, that's helpful. I think you've sort of answered. So moving on, let me ask you, since the topic is sourcing and scaling, what are the avenues used by both of you, and given that you sort of looked at different industries, to source deals? Like, how do you create this pipeline as a corporate investor?
Amisha, let you start on the answers first, and then it's easier for me.
Okay, so we use a combination of a few things. Let me just explain each one of them. One is what we call as client-driven demand mapping, right? We see needs before the market does, and we are always looking at what our client would need in the future. If you ask the client what they need, they don't know actually.
Yeah.
So we have to do the demand mapping. So that's
according
one.
Fair.
Yeah. Second is about the open innovation networks. Brigade REAP is also part of our network, but we work with a plethora of companies, startups, universities, research labs, accelerators. So that is the best source of startups. I think our team has invested last 10 years building our open innovation network. And it's a pretty enviable network which we have created, which makes sure that we get access to the best deals, most disruptive deals, and most early than any other competitor which we have, right? So that's open innovation networks. Third is proactive horizon scanning for frontier tech. So every day, I and my team talk to 2-3 startups, or we are in a university like IIT and IISc or wherever, and we are looking for frontier tech. So whether it's AI agents, quantum, robotics, or cyber, we are always proactively scanning the horizon. So that's third. Fourth is what we do, flagship startup challenges. Accenture Ventures Challenge is one of the most sought after event in India in terms of deep tech. We do it annually, and that gives us visibility to some of the most disruptive startups which we have. And then based on identifying them, we can then partner, invest, or acquire them. And finally, we are lucky that we are Accenture, so there is a lot of inbound from founders because they know that Accenture can significantly help them scale. So we get a lot of inbounds as well. So from that perspective, we are lucky. But yeah, these are a combination of 4-5 things which we do for sourcing.
Got it. Avnish, just to ask a question on that. So, but you guys, given that your Accenture have, I'm guessing you have some sector focuses, right? I mean, a D2C brand's not coming to you. So there are certain sectors, and that's where you sort of even have this leverage, and this is where you sort of even look to focus. Would
Yeah,
that be a fair assumption? Yeah.
I think rather than sectors, I would say that we basically partner and invest in what we call B2B growth stage deep tech.
Got it.
All three words are important for us, right? B2B,
Yeah.
we don't do anything B2C or D2C.
Mhm.
Growth stage, we are generally into the growth stage investments and partnerships. Also, we have a early stage fund as well, which is Project Spotlight. And then it is deep tech. So our focus is deep tech, deep science, these kind of things. From
Got
an
it.
industry sector perspective, we work in every industry except for maybe one or two, like education may not be that big for us. But from a technology perspective, it is important that we focus on deep tech because Accenture has got 800,000 people and
Yeah.
we are all technologists. So for us to focus on startups, it's very important that the startup is bringing something which Accenture does not have or cannot make it in the next 3 months. And
Got it.
that is a long, it's basically a IP based, platform based startup which has been long incubated in stealth mode. Those are the kind of things we focus on.
Got it. Okay. No, that's helpful for the viewers. Yeah. Ayappa, anything
Yeah, I
to
think
add?
again, I think following Avnish helps a lot because he's covered most of the areas that they do.
Yeah.
Just a quick two things that we do is I think one part I want to really stress on what Avnish said is the referral network, like the Open Innovation Network that what Accenture has. We at the real estate arm of it, we work with most of the industry bodies like a CBRE, Credice of the world,
Yeah.
because they get a lot of startup reference. So working with the industry bodies definitely helps us from a sourcing perspective. Inbound, again, being a brigade group, gets a lot of inbound referrals as well. And I think the last thing that we do is I think events help for us. Avnish also brought about, I think Accenture has demo days. We also do our own equivalent of, alumni meets where one part which we find very interesting is when we get our HODs from the brigade group to come and speak to tell areas that they are looking at solutions on and also areas that they're not that bullish about. I think what's equally important is, a lot of times founders are building solutions and then they're trying to find a problem. They have a solution and then they're trying to find the problem.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's good hear from the decision makers that, hey, you know what? Like in real estate, there are enough listing platforms. Please don't go build in that space because there are enough people out there. Don't build one more of that. So I think these are the few avenues and angles that we have also explored that has worked well for us.
Fair. Now coming back, I know sort of you both touched upon this, but and more Avnish than you, Ayappa, how do you balance strategic fit versus financial potential during your sort of sourcing? And what role do your internal teams play in sourcing? So I know Avnish touched upon this more, but given on the real estate, I know that even though I know a little bit about the Earth Fund and things, so as we all know, right? In some ways, we say that there's a focus, but then we find ways to justify and
That's the definitions.
yes. So how do you both sort of think about how do you balance the strategic versus financial? Because that's one of the apprehensions a lot of founders, or even as on the VC side, we have when we see a CVC or a strategic investor, quote unquote, in there, you get a little hesitant about doing the transaction then, right? So how do you balance that sort of?
Maybe
That's sort of
you
the
can go ahead.
negative that sort of always come. I'm sure you guys have
No.
had
I think
question
so.
come up. So
Yeah,
do
point.
you have to, sort of how do you convince founders that listen, we're purely there, we're not going to be hindering the next round in any way?
Yeah, that's a very
Not
fair point.
intentionally, but
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point, and that's something that we've also faced very honestly, right?
yeah.
And like you pointed out, So at Reef specifically, I think the financial angle is very important. We are not predominantly looking only at strategic. And that is when we kind of faced a clash, and we also had to introspect key, between the two startups that we have out there, between different types of startups, how much of it is financial, how much of it is strategic. At times we have clashed with our own group because some of them want startups which are, if I may use the word, more lifestyle focused, not very VC friendly, and don't see
Fair,
thoughts,
yeah.
high IRRs. So what we've kind of done right now, Tarana, is we've kind of bucketed them into two parts. Areas where we believe there is strong growth and is strong financial successes attached to it, we either take them into the accelerator program or we invest in them. Areas where we feel like, the industry needs it, for example, a startup that's into building out STPs, which might be a little more capex heavy, which is a decent amount of need in the market, but may not necessarily be VC friendly. We actually have a GTM program for them, where with those startups, we only help them with business development and getting access to the market, and don't necessarily take a financial stake with them or go onto the cap table as, from a VC's perspective. So we've kind of differentiated those two simply for this specific reason that you're talking about, Tarana, that we've also noticed this, and we want to be as founder friendly as we can. So we kind of have both these models, and depending on what suits the founder and us, we kind of work it out.
Fair. Avnish, anything to add to that? Or I think.
No, I think so. From us, our rule is that if the technology can unlock meaningful enterprise value at scale, then strategic and financial returns align naturally, right? And you don't really have to make an effort to do that. So for us, it's important that the startups which we are looking at are helping us unlock the value at an enterprise of our client or for Accenture. The other two then align.
Fair. Now moving on to, so I think we sort of, touched upon sourcing. Let's get to scaling. What are the unique sort of scaling advantages a CVC has, over a pure play VC? It could be, distribution, supply side management. According to you, what are those sort of values that a CVC can bring compared to a venture capital?
Sure.
I mean, we've all heard about the Instagram example and all, right? So would be keen to understand sort of.
Yep. So I think for us it's simple. I think it's just the industry access, right? I'm oversimplifying it, but when I say industry access, I'm saying, a lot of startups, especially in the scaling place, it's about access to the right people to kind of get your pilots in place. Again, we are a capex heavy industry. Getting pilots, getting the right feedback, and building out your product at this early stage is very, very critical in a prop tech, or now we're calling it urban tech nowadays, by the way, in terms of startups we're looking at. But I think it's extremely critical in terms of what it is. I will say that we have also had issues with, free pilots, where a lot of free pilots happen out there and then they don't convert to paid clients. So we are working very strategically with the founders to see how can we help them scale by getting them the right paid pilots? How can we help them scale by getting them the right clients and the right industry access? Again, maybe this is different for other CVCs, but we are again in an industry that's slightly more
capex heavy.
Capex is slightly also more slower in innovation.
Yeah, non-linear. Very hard to see non-linear growth.
Yeah,
so you have to sort of balance that out, and maybe for certain, as you said, in your lack of better word, industry or sector, it probably makes more sense to go with the CVC because they could sort of leverage it to their advantage versus a traditional venture capital.
This is the huge advantage that we have being in this sector, if I may say.
Okay, fair enough. Avnish,
if I can add from a technology sector perspective and also specifically from Accenture Ventures, right? So first of all, we provide instant access to Fortune 500 clients sitting from India. That probably no VC can do, right? Wherever they are based. So for us, it's probably the number one thing which we can offer to our clients, access to Fortune 500 clients. Then is the technical validation, right? Accenture, again, as I was talking about earlier, being a technology company. So the ability to test, refine, and harden solutions inside Accenture before they are taken outside is a very big thing, which again, as a CVC, we are specifically able to provide. And the third is about operational scale. So whether it is, cloud, security, data, compute, and then talent, all of these things Accenture Ventures along with Accenture can provide, which again, no VC would be able to do it because that's not their capability, nor are they interested in that, right? So this is a combination which is impossible for a financial VC to replicate.
Avnish, you're just by saying impossible. That's a strong. I have to defend them that they can
Exactly.
sometimes open the doors.
No,
No,
I was
I said a combination of that. Open the doors, yes, but whether they have operational scale in cloud security data or they have
Fair.
technical test beds where they can test out the solution, not sure whether any VC has that or would like to have it. It's not that it's rocket science, but I
Yeah,
don't think that's VC's business.
fair. No.
actually, sorry, Taran, if I may interject, I mean, considering you come from the other side of it, right? Like and I know I'm not the panelist here today, but what is your view on this entire piece of the CVC space and coming from an investor lens? Like, how are
No, I
you?
think it does. I mean, there are values, right? I mean, I see it. We do interact with some of the CVCs and know of them, and so I do see the value add they bring. At times, like I said, we've seen it particular with the D2C brands with distribution or the validation and insights that they can bring to a lot of these companies. Same with some of the strategics. I know of two of my companies that were in the logistics play and how they had having some of these larger players sort of help them figure, get over supply side, some nuances. So there is a value add for sure. It's a balancing act. Like when we started off saying, right, there's one side, there's the value add, but I know in one case they were very clear how they manage the CVC that tomorrow they're not perceived as being, as to Avnish's point, you have those various stages that tomorrow they should not be sort of considered a subsidiary, lack of better word, of that larger corporation. And then also, I'm sure this, Avnish, you must see this more, but balancing also that you're not, and actually, and even in real estate, that you should not be then perceived as also a competitor, right? In that because you are funded by a quote unquote CVC, would that say that okay, you're part of them, so then are you a competitor? So I think it's it's hard to sort of say. I think there are pros and cons, and it comes down to the individual at the CVC or the venture fund, the partner. A lot of it comes down to how they manage it and how you manage it and balance on the board.
Perfect.
So
Always good to get that perspective. Yeah.
yeah, no, as I said, I've seen it in one case where I was categorically told the CVC partner, the board member brought certain values versus the financial VC who was in there, but both ultimately had to balance out and work. So
I think it's fair. It's a fair.
and some credit was given to the individuals there. So
Yeah. Sorry for hijacking that, but back to you.
No. So now, I mean, I know you both sort of touched upon what values a CVC brings. Can you share a success story of a startup which scaled through your ecosystem, if that's possible? I'm guessing, successes can be shared. So
Yeah, I can do
Sure.
that. Maybe
No, go ahead.
start, Ayappa, if that's all
Yeah,
right.
go ahead.
I'll talk about a startup called Lizer. It is a agentic autonomous AI startup. So we identified them through our Accenture Ventures Challenge, which we did 2 years back, right? And they were the winners of one of the segments, which was on agentic AI. And after that, we actually integrated them into the Accenture overall, teams. And we ran multiple internal POCs with them, along with our Accenture teams. And we validated them in terms of agent performance, safety, scalability, data security, all those things. Quickly, then we embedded into workflows and demonstrations. And then finally, after we were convinced, after about 1.5 years, Accenture invested in them, along with some strategic other big VCs. So, in terms of VCs and CVCs, the thing is that Accenture would never invest on our own. So we always follow a VC. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we are always a minority investor. We never take a majority seat, and we always want a global VC to lead the round, and then we come as a strategic, right?
Okay.
So in this case, also Rocket Ship VC, I think, was the lead people who led the round, and then Accenture came as a minority investment. So you can see this is a perfect example of a frontier tech going through internal validation across Accenture teams, Accenture making an investment in them, and then taking them to clients for scale. So that's the entire journey we have covered with Liza.
Okay, fair. Just for the benefit of people, would you mind saying about what check sizes you guys do? I know you started off saying you do growth. And like, I was not aware, at least I was under the impression you sort of took the lead that, okay, we do minority stakes and follow a investor or a lead sort of. So
Yeah,
just so
no,
the panelists.
I can do that. So we have two kinds of funds. One is called Project Spotlight, which is focused on early stage actually. So that's about seed and pre-series A. Our ticket size there is 250K to 2 million.
Got
Okay.
it.
And then we have something called, which we have recently started, called Strategic Ventures. And this is for growth stage investments, basically series B, C, and D. And our ticket size there is 5 million to 50 million.
Okay. No, but that name strategic will freak a few people out.
Yeah.
Ayappa, anything on a story, on an example?
I'll answer the second question first, which is the check sizes.
Yeah.
Similar to Amnish and Accenture, we also only invest with someone else leading the round. Someone else pricing the round, what we do at REAP. We typically do 100K to 250K, so a slightly smaller check is what we do. And again, only in startups where we believe we can add some sort of value to it, right? In the thesis fit in terms of where we operate. The Earth Fund cuts more of the $500,000 to $2 million checks, and there they lead the round, and they are a more.
Okay.
Coming to a success story, what we've done is we've had a startup, and I think that's also important why we're moving away from prop tech to urban tech. We have a retail tech startup of ours called Lightstore.
I know the company well, very well.
So Lightstore started out of REAP as an ideation, sitting out of our offices here. Just had a concept in mind with nothing there. But for the larger benefit of the larger audience, Lightstore are a brand that takes space up in high street and malls, and then they kind of sublet it out and operationally manage it for. Started off with online first brands, but today they're doing it for multiple brands.
Offline, very familiar. No, Tarun and Raghu and all have interacted with them. Yeah.
So Tarun and Puneet started out of our offices. So Lightstore was a part of REAP. Today, as you're aware, they're managing about 100,000. So, I mean, the success story, sorry. The proof of concept was in the Orion Mall here in Brigade. That is where they tried out their space, tried out multiple business iterations and models in terms of 1 month rentals, 3 month rentals, 6 month rentals. What works better? I think the early consumers were like sleep companies, Zook, a Pan Project, and things like that. And now with New Me, they've seen multiple successes and a bunch of other brands. So Lightstore today is Series A, on the verge of raising another round, led by Axel, Soren, and Huddle, and raising multiple rounds. They have about 500,000 square feet across the country that they will be managing in the next 6 months to a year, right? So they have scaled massively, and it's also very. I think it's indicator for us also that VCs are investing in a hardcore real estate asset management play here in terms of the retail space. So that's very encouraging for us. And yeah, I think Lightstore has probably been one of our better success stories.
Good. No, they are good guys, so they deserve it.
Definitely.
Coming to, sort of we said, I mean, I know we touched upon the success stories and also, what advantages sort of a CVC brings to VCs. Now, coming to internally, how do you sort of balance all this as CVC grows? How do you balance the sort of the corporate's initiatives or sort of ethos with the startups?
Okay, so I think maybe you are also talking about what could be the challenges.
Yes, some on the challenges also, but just balancing, like how do you, there are challenges, balancing sort of as you grow, like we're seeing like check sizes are getting bigger, right? In what we do, markets are getting crowded. Today you may have this advantage, tomorrow you may not. So how do you sort of see all this evolve? So yeah, challenges sort of way forward.
I think at a strategic level, not many people in a big corporate understand what a corporate venture arm of their organization does, to be honest. Right?
Okay.
So there is a constant kind of an awareness and education which is needed to be provided. And also, look, I told right in the beginning that there are different instruments and templates which a corporate has, right? For example, R&D is a big part of every corporate. The R&D won't know what corporate venture capital is doing, and they won't know what R&D is doing. So these silos are there, which obviously creates a fiction in a big organization. That's one. The second is from an internal perspective, there are all sorts of lags, which I can call, right? Procurement lag, for example, takes a very long time to get procurement and other parts of the team aligned. Then you have security and compliance, change management, integration complexity, prioritization, for example, good idea, wrong timing, kind of a struggle, right? So these kind of things are constantly have to be balanced. And, because the rest of the organization is trying to transform the core, and that is where the main livelihood and main money is coming. And what you are trying to do is to pivot to the new, right? So there is this constant tension between the core and the new, which you need to balance in a big corporate.
Yeah, I mean, and I second what Avinash is saying, and I think it's very underrated in terms of the battles that we as CVC players fight internally within our orgs. Like we are also we are internally selling, constantly selling all our startups internally,
Yeah.
trying to get them adoptions, trying to get them pilots. And I think, but some of the areas that Avinash spoke about are very real, right? Data security is a huge, huge concern. Other area at least that we face is the scaling part. Typically,
Yeah.
now, if I take a quick example, say alternate materials, that's a hot space in the real estate space. You have your green cements, you have your green concrete and all coming up. A lot of startups are able to do pilots. It's a chicken and egg problem, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because they are able to do pilots. And then when a developer is like, okay, this works, now give me X tons of the cement, the startups are not equipped to kind of really do that scale suddenly, right? And if you ask the startups, it's again a financial issue where it's a chicken and egg, like I said, unfortunately. These are areas that we're trying to constantly solve for. We work with the government a bit, and we're also working with other developers to create test beds where these pilot beds in the real estate space is really, really critical for us. That's the only way startups are able to give proof of concept. You need these certifications, a lot of industry certifications to get your products into a lot of buildings in this industry, right? So those are some of the challenges that we are also constantly battling with our internal stakeholders. And I think, yeah, that's a very underrated challenge that no one speaks about as much.
Fair. Last two questions, and then I'll open up because there are a bunch of Q&As
Sure.
from the audience. And either one of you or both of you can feel free to answer. How do you think deal sourcing and scaling will look in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, given everything that's changing. I mean, to be honest, even, there are a few CVCs today, right? And there were a few VC funds. I often joke that VC is no more buy side. It's become quite sell side where capital is becoming a commodity. So we sort of have to go. I mean, I literally sometimes feel I'm pitching to founders versus founders pitching to me. So sort of where do you see this go in the next 3 to 5 years?
So I think one of the things which we are experiencing already is this move towards AI first scouting, right? And signal based sourcing. So I was talking about like Lizer, we are not only taking to our clients, but we are using Lizer for sourcing as well and to make our own platforms.
Okay.
So autonomous AI in terms of scouting and deal making will become very, very important as the technology matures. That's one. Second is frontier areas like, for example, quantum, synthetic data, autonomous agents, defense tech, uh, privacy preserving compute will all
Yes.
dominate. These are the things which will dominate. So infra, compute, defense, quantum,
Yeah.
these will dominate, I think, any CVC's portfolio. And finally, sourcing will shift from who's raising to who's shaping critical capabilities, right? That will be a big change as we go ahead.
I think I'm going to take up Avinash on this. I guess that the AI sourcing is something that we've not explored actively like they have, and I think I actually know of one of the Liza, Anirudh, we know at Liza, so we'll definitely get in touch with them to see how they can help us as well. But yeah, I think for us, what I think the slight advantage that we have, again coming back to Tarana, is that we're in an industry that is now seeing a lot of startups coming into this space.
Yes.
We're actually spending a decent amount of time at the early stages with college incubators and university incubators to get students in civil engineering and mechanical engineering to kind of look at this place look at entrepreneurship as an alternative and not build necessarily only for fintech and D2C, and even use real estate and infra as a place that they should be building for. And it goes without saying, with all that we're seeing in Bangalore as a city with the infra and the issues that are happening, urbanization and the urban solutions is on top of the mind of most, including the government. The government is working actively with a lot of the startups for urban solutions. So I think we are in a good space, if I may say so, that we are hoping to see a lot more. And I'm happy, excited to be where we are today.
And I'm going to wrap it up with one last question on India. How do you sort of see CVC evolve in India over the next few years? More players coming in, sort of more active roles. Where do you sort of see CVC?
Maybe Ayappa, you can go first on this.
Yeah, I'm sure Avinash has been looking at this with a.
Scaling,
He's
yeah.
been seeing this for 10 years. I think mine is simple, right? I think it again goes back to Avinash's first answer, which is I think there are multiple models, and I think everyone's going to take one shape or form of it. I don't think anyone's sitting passive right now, waiting for it. It's waiting for the trends to see. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Especially in the space we are at. While we started this 9 years back, no one else in the real estate space was looking at corporates, right? Today, every real estate company at least has an investment arm that is doing some sort of investments in startups, either through as LPs and funds or directly, some sort of money into funds, into startups themselves. So I think in the real estate and infra space, capital availability is what they are kind of opening up right now to get access to this newer piece that we spoke about. They want to know what the latest trends in the market are and what's happening in the market. And I think one way to do that is either through capital or to work in the CVC space. I think a lot more, like even smaller developers that we're working with, like so developers with, say 8 to 10 buildings only across the country, they are also looking at innovation as a huge angle. So again, for us specifically in this space, I think we see a lot more adoption, a lot more smaller companies also looking at innovation and tech in the real estate space.
Fair.
Yeah, if I had to give my view, I think I'm not at the moment very happy in terms of what is going on from a CVC perspective in India.
Okay.
While you are right, you mentioned some big names like Reliance and Tata and maybe a few others who have done that. But I think it is still a area where Indian corporates and Indian conglomerates, especially promoter-led organizations, have to still do a lot of catch up. I don't think Indian startups have got funding from our own big business houses as much as they should have got, right? And it's pretty clear if you see the number of CVCs also in India and the kind of money. Yeah, the CVC funding is increasing, but from a very small base, right? So I think Indian businesses and Indian conglomerates have to really tighten up on this and trust Indian startup. A lot of them make investments, but they make investments outside India, right? Which is fine. We also do that. But I think because the question was focused on India, I think we put a lot of our faith and trust, especially in the Indian deep tech startups, because otherwise we won't be able to compete in areas like AI.
Yeah.
Going ahead. So I think that's one. And the second is, this public plus private plus academia collaboration. That is, I think, very important. So, for example, if you look at one of the startups, QPi AI, they built India's 64 qubit Kaveri processor, right? And it all came through a combination of these partnerships, which I'm talking about. So I think if the corporates and government and academia come together, I think that naturally will also make sure that CVC also gets a boost. And obviously, some of the tax and other policies need to be tweaked as well. But I think trust in Indian startups, Indian deep tech startups, is very important for the CVCs.
Got it. Fair. So I'll just start asking the queries that folks have put up. I think the first question is, I have a new river energy tech. Who can help us? So I guess he was asking about, he has some patent for PCT publication. I'll let CII get back to him. Then someone wanted your details, Avinash. And then
I think just on that, anybody who calls me Avinash will not get anything from me.
sorry.
So they have to
That's what's written there. Sorry.
But I'm just telling the startups, so they have to address me as Avnish. Once they do it, I'll do everything. But Avinash, they get rejected immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. Even I, midway through my conversation, I made the mistake of calling Avnish Avinash, but I think I saw your name there and I got...
Ayappa, you don't need anything from me, so you are safe.
I hope I'm safe as well, but I was getting a little confused as well, to be honest.
The name, every time I kept seeing that, I got a little confused. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. No problem.
Yeah. So I think this is more again a question someone had. Our product Contract Studio, is a securitization platform for financial assets in the blockchain space using Web3 and AI. We are currently looking for funding, and we would be good to connect and explore more. Could you highlight approach strategies for a company that is moving from startup to SME category and continuing to building relationship with CVCs when looking at meeting ESG targets? Would new CVCs be interested in deep tech solutions available from the company in diversifying the investment portfolio?
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, this is some relevance to what we are doing, right?
Yeah.
ESG is, so at REAP, I think about 26% of our startups are in the ESG or the sustainability space. So we do actively look at startups in the ESG and sustainability, but for us, sustainability is built environment sustainability, right? So anything with decarbonization, energy conservation, HVAC, water, air, and things like that, that, help sustainability of a building. To answer your specific question, Ishwar, right? If I got your name right, Ishwar. We are open to working with people like this. I think, again, like Tarana brought up, we have a GTM track where we help startups get business. The one thing I want to leave a lot of the founders with is, this mythical thing of raising funding, which is great. I think a lot of the times the startups are not clear why they want funding. Now, because you mentioned that you want funding to build in ESG, right? Deep tech, if it's R&D, if you're investing in your tech, you're investing in that, always happy to do it, right? But we get a lot of queries for startups who are more lifestyle businesses, who are revenue, EBITDA positive, PAT positive, who are actually got good revenues, who are just raising funding more of a vanity. I would strongly recommend do not raise funding for the sake of it or to maintain any vanity metrics. All those counterproductive to what all the three of us are doing out here. I think raising funding is only if you really need to invest it into tech or any capital kind of requirements. But barring that, back to your question, yes, if you're looking at ESG, if you're looking at built environment ESG, happy to kind of look at it.
Then, Amish, this is a question for you. Accenture Ventures invested in only 2 startups in India as information available and invested only 25 million from 2015 in deep tech startups. Is that correct?
It is correct in terms of India. We have invested 200 million overall from a global perspective. And all our investments generally are in deep tech because we don't really do anything more. So yes, from an India perspective, actually we ended up doing more acquisitions, right, than investment. So we have acquired companies like semiconductor chip design companies. We acquired deep tech startup called Flutura. We acquired deep tech startup called Byte Prophecy. So that's something which we have done. Investments, we did it on, Pixel, which is a space tech startup, and Liza was talking about. But our main contribution to the ecosystem is the market access. I have always maintained that anybody can get funding from anybody in this ecosystem. Now, the money is not the problem for a startup. The problem is that sitting in India, can they work with Fortune 500 clients? Like one of our startup, Yellow.ai, they came to us when they were $1 million ARR. Today, they are 40, 45 million ARR, right? We haven't invested in them, but we have taken them from 1 million to 45 million ARR. That's the power of Accenture. So we always feel that the go-to market and the client access is what we give. Funding anybody can do, but you are right. We have not done those many investments. But if you combine our investments with acquisitions, then I think that number is better.
Okay. No, that helps clarify. I know we're almost we're on time, I think. There were a couple more quick questions. And Anand, is that okay if I quickly go to those Q&As?
Yeah, a couple of minutes is fine.
Yeah. What level of strategic fit is being transferred to and over the time frame of 5-10 years? I don't know what that means. What's a personal and professional problem that haunts you in what's a personal and professional problem that haunts you in the landscape? I think they probably meant in your environment, but we can. Hi, I'm Manoj Natarajan, founder of Genovi Technologies. We are into carbon removal using our patented biomass to biochar systems. And like Ayappa mentioned, we are working on carbon removal and reducing the carbon footprint of building is something of great interest for us. Presently, soil amendment is what we get.
There's no question here. But yeah, I think I leave it with that. Happy to connect with
okay, okay. Yeah, it's not a question. Someone's asked, will you be interested to use AI, ML, GIS, IoT in agri-tech as we are an agri-tech startup in early revenue validated by IIT and looking for VC funding for expansion. Again, I think that that's an open question.
Yeah,
I guess
we don't look at agri as a space, unfortunately.
yeah, and I'm
so.
guessing neither do you, right, Avnish? So
Agri is not an area.
yeah, happy to whoever that is to connect if you want.
Yeah,
We can
happy
see
to share
if we can help you.
I'll just drop my email address here on the chat, and anybody who's looking at it, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah. Tarana, maybe you want to just ask the last
I think with this we can wrap up. So I think what I'm hearing from you both is that, you know, with CVC, you have to look beyond just funding, look at what sort of what's value the CVCs can bring from an industry expertise or sector expertise to sort of valid product market fit validation and those things. And that sort of can help you not only sort of increase your distribution or momentum or get the product market fit, but also sort of sometimes help with the short-term pain where you know early enough what's working and what's not working. And also the messages that, you know, of course, they can, like Avnish said, a lot more can be done in the space, a lot more players, a lot more sort of contribution of the larger players to sort of build this. And I think with that, we can wrap it up. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Tarana.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ayappa. Thank you, Avnish.
Thank you.
Thanks, Avnish. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
That was a very interesting session. Thank you. We're really happy all of you could join. Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll keep the conversation going. Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to our next session. It is on post-investment integration and collaboration models. It is the moderator is none other than Paula Mariwala, who's a very recognized and recognizable face in the VC world. Just a reminder, at any point, if you have any question, just please put it in the chat. Paula will take it. We are not going to open up a window. You put it in the chat. Paula will constantly look at the chat and take it at the right time. Also, there are a lot of questions on help required. You may want to connect with CII CIES. CIES people will again put their, Priyanka is there. She'll put the email contact details. CIES can help you. So you may want to reach out to them. With that, it's over to Paula. We're running on time. So, and Paula is also always on time. So over to you, Paula.
Thanks, Ninad, and wonderful to hear all the other sessions as well on this very important topic of CVCs, because I feel while you know, our ecosystem has evolved as far as venture funds and startups are concerned, including incubators, accelerators, various partnerships, I think we have a little bit lagged behind in you know, the growth of CVCs or involvement of larger companies in this ecosystem. So I think it's very timely that we sort of dissect this a little more and see how we can have a more vibrant ecosystem involving corporates in various ways. So on the panel with me to discuss this and decode this, we have Munitpal Jolly from Jubilant Bhartiya Group and Sonam Jain. Has Sonam joined?
Sonam has joined, but facing some technical joining and rejoining it. Yeah.
All right, so perfect. So we have Sonam Jain and Munitpal. So let me just introduce the panelists while Sonam joins. So both are representing, you know, very interesting and active corporates from India, which have a global footprint as well. So Munitpal is, like I said, representing the Jubilant Bhartiya Group, which has, you know, Domino's and other food brands, and also focus on pharma, agri, life sciences, and so on. And he leads the corporate VC arm of the group, investing in early businesses connected to the group's core sectors in pharma, life sciences, foods, performance materials, etc. He comes from a very apt background. He headed PEVC investments at Hero Enterprise, which has been one of the early CVCs in India, and also led global M&A and India business development at Dr. Reddy's Labs, driving their acquisition and strategic partnerships. And I will talk a little bit more about the thesis at Jubilant as we get into the session. Let me also introduce Sonam, who leads investments in India for let me say it right, Convivialite Group, which is Ventures, which is part of Pernod Ricard's global corporate venture arm. And she focuses on tech-enabled businesses reshaping retail, entertainment, hospitality, and consumer experiences within India. So we are representing broad number of sectors and sectors which VCs are fairly active in. Sonam sits on boards of companies like Joint Ventures and um, Iloilo, and previously built one of India's strongest digital health investment portfolios during her time at Roundglass Ventures. And before moving into ventures, she had a stellar career in investment banking across India and Hong Kong with Nomura. Sonam, I believe you're a young mother, so welcome and excited to have you both join this interesting conversation.
Yes, likewise. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah. So, I think there have been some sessions where we've tried to understand, the roles that CVCs play in this ecosystem. But to start off with, Sonam, can you just elaborate a little bit on your thesis at your venture firm, and how do you really evaluate firms, considering, there is some sort of a strategic balance that you seek between the core of your companies and the startup or the companies you're engaging with. Does the strategy sort of include how eventually the founder or the company will integrate with either any of your companies or your partners, or how it'll add to the core of your of the parent company? Is it more than just financial returns or growth that we as regular financial VCs look at? And generally, what is your thesis around choosing investments in particular sectors?
Sure. No, thank you for the opportunity and glad to be doing this. So, Conviviality Ventures, that's the team I'm part of. This is the corporate venture arm of Pernod Ricard. As you can see from my background, Pernod Ricard is a large alcobev player, one of the largest globally and large presence in India as well. We started the CVC arm back in 2017 with the primary goal or the primary objective to sort of have one more a tool for innovation within the large corporate. While there are other tools like M&A, incubating ideas, etc., we believe that CVC can offer a really, I would say, risk averse strategy to for large corporates to get to know more about what's happening in newer spaces and be connected to the spots of innovations across the ecosystem. So that was the goal. First started investing in the US, China, EMEA, and then a couple of years ago I joined to lead the India practice. And these markets were selected basis how important they are for the core business as well. So US, India, China are the largest markets for the parent company as well. The idea, it was to invest in spaces which are peripheral to the core business of Alcobev. So this is not a pre-M&A tool. This is not where we go out and take positions into companies which we will ultimately want to acquire. That's not the goal. The idea is to invest in spaces, like I said, which are peripheral. So if you think of Alcobev, think media entertainment, think live entertainment, think content, think consumer brands, which I would say are peripheral in various pillars. It could have the same consumer segment. It could have a very similar marketing activity. It could have similar distribution, etc. Right. So those were some of the sectors that we listed down and started sort of actively hunting portfolio investments in. Obviously, some of this thesis was also localized to say the market. So, for example, in India, Alcobev marketing is such a different beast. There are a lot of rules and regulations. So, corporates and brands use brand extensions or tying up with other category brands to be able to market themselves. So, investing in consumer brands is also a thesis that we follow. So those are sectors that we invest in. Typically, because this is balance sheet capital, it's not separate vehicle that we use. We use balance sheet capital. It allows us flexibility. So we invest anywhere between 1 million to up to 10 million in startups. So anywhere between pre-series A to series B, series C. The idea is not to, there is no, I would say, criteria of holding a certain percentage. We are happy to partner with companies even when we own minority, like significant minority, or being one of the participating investors in a round, as long as we at the start know what we are getting into. Now, coming to your question on financial strategic, yes, both for us, both matter equally. I would say for financial returns, we evaluate each and every startup like any other financial VC. We look at the TAM, we look at the founder, we look at what possible potential exit could be 5 to 7 years down the line to have a case for financial returns. But because we are a CVC and we are not a fund, strategic returns are equally important, and how we measure those strategic returns is different. I like to say that no two CVCs are the same, because the objective with which a corporate starts investing in startups is very different. At Perno or at Conviviality Ventures, the idea is that can we, across these different spaces, see either we learn something from the startup, or we do a commercial partnership, or we do a common GTM, or the epic of everything, which is co-create products with them, right? So these are the four areas in which we like to collaborate. We like to measure that in terms of how we're doing on the portfolio side. And yes, the way we ensure that that happens is making sure it is part of our deal flow analysis process. It's part of our investment committee, where when we are talking to a particular startup and we are excited about that space, even before we take it to the IC, we start socializing that idea amongst the relevant business unit, making them aware, if they're not already aware, of the space and how they could collaborate, also seeking inputs from them, because ultimately it's important that they say that this is of interest and they will work on it, because ultimately once the investment is done, we sort of want those folks also to be equally excited and put in the time, effort, whatever is required to be able to partner with them. So yes, they are part of the process, and it is part of our investment committee memo to say that, okay, these are the three things that possibly they could work together. Again, this is just setting the intention. It's impossible to have a full-fledged pilot before the investment round. So the idea is we set the intention, we say, okay, these are the 3 or 4 things that the startup could work on with a potential business unit, and that is sort of agreed upon on both sides, the founder as well as someone internally. And then it's the job of me and my team to be able to facilitate that even post investment, be that group within the company which is reducing friction for this strategic partnership to happen. And for me and for us, the ideal successful investment would look something like good financial returns, but also we've been able to at least capture one of the 4 ways of partnership with them. Yeah.
Great, Sonam, and I'm going to come back to some of the things that you did bring out. But I'm happy to note that because we are always, as sort of professional financial VCs, sometimes skeptical of CVCs coming on the cap table, because there's always this fear of acquisition or aligning the vision with their own vision and so on. Also, the fact that you mentioned you don't have to have a minimum percentage ownership and so on. So this is really what we need in the ecosystem to have the benefits of a corporate, like you said, along the periphery of a sector that you know so well. So I'm going to come back to you with some specific questions around that and the kind of companies that you have indeed invested in. But Munitpal, coming to you, yours, of course, Jubilant is more of an Indian group, very prominent in the sectors that you're active in. Do you follow a similar philosophy of investing around sectors which are on the periphery? I think Sonam was quite clear that it's not necessarily a goal to have to acquire or acquihire or merge. How does Jubilant view this? And I want to clarify that Manipal's view on this particular panel are his own and does not represent views of Jubilant or indeed of any commitment from Jubilant CVC. So with that caveat, Manipal, please, we'd love to understand more about how you view investing as a corporate VC in the sectors that you're active in, and a little bit more about your process as well.
Sure. Thanks, Paula. I guess what Sonam covered broadly aligns with us in terms of our thesis as well. We, Jubilant as a group, is pretty active in sectors such as food and beverages, which everyone knows about, but there are also sectors such as pharma life sciences, chemicals, auto, and we have huge business in the auto dealership space. We are also present in oil and gas, aviation, etc. So it's a pretty diverse group in terms of the length and breadth of the sectors we cover, right? And from a CVC standpoint, when we are looking at any new age business or startup or innovation or a technology, the idea is to look at businesses that either directly help us in our operating businesses or are adjacent to what product or service offering we have, right? Both ways we tend to look at it. The idea is, I guess, both strategic and financial returns, but more than, the first lens that we will typically use is more strategic, because at the end of the day, it's the capital lying on the balance sheet of the operating companies, and we are always answerable to our shareholders in terms of what that it should be the best use of that capital, right? As opposed to investing directly in our own business. So there's always that question, and that we have to field. So from that perspective, we tend to look at it. Again, from an acquisition or a few months or few years down the line, whether we want to acquire the business, that's not the criteria typically that we tend to look at, or the going in hypothesis. It's more to do with how both sides can benefit out of this partnership, right? We could be a vendor or a supplier or a client to the business, or in some shape and form tend to use what they're trying to develop, and vice versa, right? We could provide the platform to the growing business to do product market fit or run some of their pilots, etc. But the ultimate idea is to work jointly and not get into an acquisitive mode right away. If things work out fine, if they don't, then there is always another way to look at things 4, 5, 6 years down the line, right? So that's the thesis. In terms of the process, it's largely similar to what any financial VC would employ, right? We tend to, once we have crossed that threshold of looking at it from a strategic standpoint and ensured that it's going to benefit both sides, it follows any typical process, including initial due diligence, term sheets, negotiations, etc. Typical check sizes would be, again, largely similar, $1 to $10 million. That's been the historical sweet spot for us. And we tend to kind of stick to that, prefer to take a sizable minority, so that we can benefit by having board representation we can benefit the company itself by having a board representation on the board. So that's our thesis, and that's how we operate.
Great. From, if I can say on behalf of the ecosystem, I think this is very heartening to hear, because we always, like I said earlier, a little bit skeptical of, the intentions of corporate VCs. And it's also heartening to know that you have a process which is fairly independent, because another worry we have as VCs is, how if you sort of overpromise your involvement with the startup, how will you eventually sell internally? How will you get the teams to work together? And actually, that is our topic today, post-investment integration and collaboration models. So I think the key here is collaboration. And of course, as big players in the sectors that you tend to invest in, you would bring in not only access, but also expertise, experience of what's happening in that much more than a VC who's generalist, right? So I think that's definitely a value that we look at. Tell me, how has it been, Munitpal? Let me start with you. You do have a few investments that you've done along with other VCs. What has been your experience? Because you do take a board seat most of the times working with other VCs. Do you find that you have divergent goals sometimes for the company as the company grows, or you're pretty much aligned and you factor in the fact that some pivoting may always happen in early stage startups, even if they do have a product market fit and so on. How has it been to collaborate with other stakeholders post-investment?
It's been a mix always, right? First of all, we understand that things may not evolve the way we want them to, right? So initially, the hypothesis could be different than how things pan out a couple of years down the line. So while working with all stakeholders is important, it's also important to realize that the purpose of the company, why they exist, should not get defeated, right? So working with them, we our thesis, our post investment, is to work along the lines that we envisaged, right? Reduce friction in terms of their access to the system, in terms of what they want to do, extend help in any which way we want, right? Because initially there was a strategic reason why we came together, right? And that continues to stay. However, if there is a pivot or any change in plans, things may not work out the way we intended it to be, and the company wants to pivot or go in a different direction, we always, while we have our views and we have our ways to suggest, advise the company, we are not averse to looking at a different direction if that's what is the best course of action at that point in time. And like I said, there was a strategic reason why we came together, but there is also, you should know when to say no in certain situations. So we understand that, and in the past it has happened. Companies, our investments, portfolio companies have looked at, pivoted in different directions, and we've always supported. There is that larger financial goal as well that always exists, and if we believe that that's the best path for both sides to realize that goal, then we are happy to support and move forward, not averse to or staying or being stickler to what we initially decided.
That's a very important point, because again, I think one of the misnomers in the ecosystem is that they would sort of not, it would be difficult to pivot away when there is a corporate investor on the cap table. So it's important to know that it's equally in everybody's interest to work towards the financial returns. Sonam, in your experience, how has this panned out? And also, sort of an adjacent question, you said you follow a process which is similar to a VC and you do adjacent sectors. But do you follow, like as VCs, we follow a portfolio approach, right? So we also look at collaborations within the portfolio. We also have, sort of peer learning equivalent within our portfolio. We learn ourselves as well as we offer this to our founders. And that is a big value that a good investor brings beyond the check. So what are some of the things that you do, given that you are building a portfolio, which are really helpful for the founders beyond the check and having access to, let's say, your group companies?
Yeah. So, what we bring in as a large corporate with sort of multinational presence in different countries is something that is really attractive to, I would say the startup founders, especially ones who are wanting to, go international, crack different markets. One of the companies in our Indian portfolio, they recently, like a year and a half ago, possibly a year after our investment, decided to, start the Middle East operations. And that was like something, super live that we could possibly, help them on, because we have already a Gulf presence. And this is a company in gifting. Um, and so again, there were common areas of distribution, etc. There were it's an e-commerce website, so there was also connections to be made offline, like I said, with distributors and with other stakeholders, restaurants, etc. And there, having access to like the senior leader there from Pono, and getting these two teams together to work on things, commonly, and also start off projects where this team can possibly help our core business there. So things like these are, I think, where founders, look up to us to help them on distribution, new market access, etc., which we've done. Very interestingly, on the portfolio approach, because we have a global portfolio, we do global portfolio meets once a year, where we have, founders from all our 50 portfolio companies, not just in India, but China, Europe, US attend, and have them interact with each other. And that has been, I would say, another very useful thing for the founders, where especially even if it's not the same market or the same industry that possibly two founders from different geographies may be in, there are other synergies. Like, for example, we have one of our international portfolio companies called Fever, large sort of ticketing platform. When they entered India, they were already collaborating with our Indian portfolio founders. So I think that is another sort of value addition that we do. And look, I think, like, Munit Pal mentioned, in terms of helping them, we are there as much as they, want us to. We are also, we don't take board seats, but we are, part of, the board to board observer seats, etc. And happy to support the company. And then at the same time, we believe that, because like you rightly said, the portfolio approach, the idea is not to have, 100% partnership with 100% of the portfolio. We are very aware that because we are coming in at different stages, especially the early stage companies, they will evolve into, they will find their own path. And maybe that path includes a business where we may not have as much synergies in. And that's why even the KPI for us to partner with our portfolio companies is at 50%. So that's the KPI we've set for ourselves, that if we have, say, 10 portfolio companies, we should be able to have ongoing partnerships with at least, 5 of them. So because we already acknowledged that maybe some early stage companies evolve into something else, and partnerships have to be win-win, right? So unless it's also interesting to the startup and it's also worth their time, they would not be interested, or that partnership would not last for long. Maybe they do a pilot here and there. But we're aware that all of that is dynamic and it will change, and hence we strive to have a 50% sort of partnership ratio in our portfolio.
Is there a pattern, Sonam, you've seen with where you've had successful collaborations or partnerships with the startups you've invested in? There's some sort of a consistent factor that has worked. In your view, what would, if there's anything that's
Yeah.
between companies that you think have really successfully met all your goals?
Sure. So a couple of things. One, like I just said, that it has to be a win-win. I think there are times when we, at the beginning of the investment or just before the investment, we have, like I said, we've set the intention. But when it comes to actually, executing the partnership, it may not be as fruitful to the startup, right? To the founder, because obviously, the founder is fighting many battles, and she may not have the time, bandwidth, resource, etc., to continue working on projects which are not high ROI for them. So having, incentives which are equal on both sides, or at least meaningful to the other, it's important. Second thing which has worked from a process perspective, I would say, is having someone within the business units who's involved in the deal before the investment, not post. Sometimes I think what happens in large corporates is, these are evolving teams, dynamic teams. The head of a business unit may change after 2 years, etc. So that is another, I would say, cause of friction where they may not have the context. And these are all, this is all innovation. So nothing is significantly adding revenue, I would say, in like a month, right? It is a long-term thing which will develop. So someone needs to have that vision. So if we have this person involved pre-investment, and this is the person who's sort of owning, the partnership and taking it forward, I think that really helps. If there is a, discontinuity in this team, that can also sometimes, cause the partnership to take longer to its fruition. um, and yeah, and I think lastly, like the natural organic evolution of the business, right? If it evolves in a similar in the similar customer segment, similar distribution, etc., that again helps the two partners to come together. So yeah, that those I would say would be some important things that we've noticed for partnerships that work well. Yeah.
So, post-integration, the biggest fear one has, whether a founder or, other people on the cap table, is that, let's say strategic corporate has gotten the cap table with an intent, of course, to help, like we've discussed. But how easy or difficult it is for the internal teams to sort of respect your your thesis around it. That the R&D typically says, well, I can do it. Why do you need these young people or these people with no experience of the sector and so on? Similarly, with product teams, we find that, there's always a sort of a lack of trust or belief, and also some sort of little territorial approach, in addition to the fact that, startups need to move very fast, whereas corporates have their priorities, and sometimes we feel there's a big lag in adoption. I mean, one of my companies, for example, was actually their product was to go into the manufacturing unit of this CVC. And while, the CVC team was very excited, as was the top management team, but on the ground, it was very hard to really put that product in. Muneet, have you seen that particularly in tech-enabled solutions or technology solutions? The internal teams are a little territorial, aren't they? So how do you navigate this, or has that been a challenge? Because you are coming from your portfolio side, right? So how do you sort of manage this challenge?
Of course, I think that that stays, and I can even relate it to my experience in other organizations where we've entered into partnerships, and later on the teams on the ground are not able to go along well with each other, right? I think they tend to get a bit territorial, like you said, uh, sort of get into that mode where they probably don't understand what's in it for them. How can two sides work together? There's friction to start with, and the messaging from the top probably has not reached in the right shape and form to the bottom, right? So those things definitely have existed, continue to exist, I guess, with all sort of CVC partnerships. And in my view, there are two or three ways in which this could be tackled, right? One is, I think Sonam sort of touched upon it. It's better to inform or rather involve business teams right upfront, pre-investment as well, right? The key stakeholders on the business side should be involved and informed about the intention and why we are entering into this sort of an investment or a partnership. That messaging and alignment, including the top leadership, needs to be there so that everyone is on the same page to start with, right? That's very important, and it goes a long way in reducing the friction. Second, I think what has helped, and this is more tactical, which is have regular sort of check-ins or meetings with teams at both ends, so that in case there is any evolution in the thought process or the messaging needs to be more fine-tuned, etc., that there are various platforms in which one could maps POCs at both ends to be able to take it forward. I guess the fundamental thing is people need to be uh, people need to feel that they are involved and this is making an impact. And as long as one is able to address that, there should not the chances of that friction tend to get reduced. So that's been my experience. And but coming back to your question, uh, these sort of things continue to exist, and I think there is no one size fits all solution here. One needs to think on the spot, on the feet, and take it forward and embrace it with both arms. That one needs to work on it, right? Involvement of the CVC team right through the process till the time that uh, both sides have started working properly together uh, uh, is very, very important, because that's the sort of team that continues to stay and ensure that the objectives of both sides are met.
So the CVC team does stay involved post-investment,
Yeah.
whether the value add is clearly demonstrated and goes forward. But tell me, is there a situation you've come across where there's sort of conflicts? Because let's say they come up with a beverage brand that competes with yours, or a food product or something that is in direct competition, and considering it's from your balance sheets. How have you navigated any such scenarios? And do you include that in your terms when you are actually making the documents for the investment? Do you put a non-compete, NDA, all that kind of stuff? And how is that viewed? And sometimes I'm sure you've come across this kind of a conflict of interest dilemma to both of you. Sonam, maybe you can take that first.
Sure. No, so we don't add any non-competes or anything in the documents, and I think that's also a learning from. I've been in CVCs before, and I've seen the evolution of CVCs, especially in India. I think having rights which are, which actually demonstrate what you're, trying to claim is very important. So the minute you start taking additional rights as a CVC, I think that flows through, and market reputation catches up. So it's important to have rights which are similar to, I would say, other financial investors. Of course, if there is intent to do more on the strategic side, that can be captured, but we don't ask for any such non-competes, etc. Interestingly, not in the India portfolio, but globally, we have had a lot of beverage investments, especially in the US. US is a deep, consumer beverage market. There have been investments in non-alcoholic drinks, and that's a big trend there. Um, and initially when we invested, I wouldn't say conflict of interest, but there was skepticism within the corporate that can this become big, and you know you've seen that sort of come out in the last few years where it's really catching up as a trend. I would say conflict of interest, if it comes up, and I'm just answering this on a very hypothetical basis. We've not had that in the portfolio, but if the rights don't allow it, there is always a graceful way to exit, or exit, or go the other way, where if it becomes too important, it's too valuable to the parent, maybe they can possibly think of having a larger stake if both parties are equally interested. But no, we've not had a live example. I think most, even with the non-alcoholic portfolio, or the low alc portfolio, it's been a great learning experience for the CVC, for the corporate. Um, um, so yeah, but I don't think rights can solve that. Yeah.
Again, that's good to clarify, because that's again a sort of sort of a bias that we have, that they'll want special rights, and whether that matches the advantages of
And that's a right. I would say it is the perception that most CVCs have, and I think I was in a CVC before, so I've seen the evolution, the awareness also bring up a little bit, and it will only be solved by how CVCs act in the market. And there is no, I wouldn't say there there is no harm in having a CVC which is focused on pre-M&A, as long as they're communicating that that's the strategy. I think if the expectations are set right and say this is why we are investing, or this is why we have the CVC, I think then it's okay. The problem happens when the mistrust happens, when something else is communicated and then something else happens.
Yeah. Munitpal, would you like to add anything to that?
I guess broadly it's the same thing here. It kind of ties back to when we had made that investment, the kind of strategic rationale we looked at and evaluated is has never come in the way of execution for us so far. We also tend to, I would say, in case that happens, I guess in those cases, we tend to rely back on the contract and the terms and rights that we have as an investor. We have in certain cases agreed on non-competes, but that happens, that's not one way, that's both ways. Okay. It's also true with is as much true with the investee company as much as it's true for us. So those things we have tend to take care of, but never really come across a conflicting situation. Hypothetically, if that happens, I guess there are ways and means to handle it. Things can be conveyed right up front in terms of what the intention is. And I firmly believe in something, which is if you really, don't want to get along, it's better to
Part ways.
Part ways amicably. No contract can stop you from doing anything if you really want to, or not doing for that matter. So it's better to understand each other and part ways amicably in case that happens. That's what.
And I mean, transparency and trust are paramount to any such
of course
partnership. So, I think best is to have a good relationship with the founding team and the others on the board. Yeah.
And tend to stay involved regularly so that there are no surprises.
Right. So we're going to open up to questions.
Ola, you have just 3 minutes now to wind up.
I haven't seen much. There's one question on the legal structure that is followed for a CVC arm. I think what you said is that it's usually investment from your balance sheet. So is there anything else you'd like to add on that?
No, I think for us it's a direct balance sheet investment. There could be different structures depending on the corporate. So if you're talking to, if you're a founder and talking to a CVC, it's best you clarify it upfront. Usually people have they also set it up as a fund, maybe with the sole LP, where the parent is the sole LP, or they would have a separate company or private limited company to do the investments. But it's different. Like I said, no two CVCs are the same. So best to clarify it if you're in conversations with a CVC.
I think there are a couple of questions, but they're very specific on the kind of help that they require to connect with CVC. So I request CII to probably respond to them specifically. I think somebody wants a contact for Dr. Reddy's VC or a startup desk in Dr. Reddy's. So maybe, you can do that. But I want to just wrap up since there are no specific questions. Okay, there is another question on compliance requirements on tech front. When a CVC comes on board, is there any special compliance requirement for the startup? Because obviously, again, we have to be a little more careful since you may be doing it, a listed company doing it from the balance sheet, or a global company may have their own norms, which I have encountered that sometimes it's difficult because they have their own non-negotiable norms that you do adhere to for compliance. So are there any such specific requirements? It may differ VC to VC, but anything that you'd like to talk about?
I guess there are no special compliances. It's pretty standard. If the investing company is a publicly listed company, right? Which in our case is certain. For Jubilant, there are a few listed companies, and if the investment is made through them, we request there are quarterly and annual compliances from a registrar of company or Ministry of Corporate Affairs perspective that the company, and hence by extension the portfolio the investee company has to follow in terms of sharing numbers, financials. It's typical stuff, nothing special. And similarly, from a board perspective, the requirements are also pretty standard as per the company's law. Nothing specific that comes along with it. I mean, nothing
Global
special.
company, is there anything special that you require from compliance point of view?
No, we use the Indian entity to invest in, and like I think Manipal mentioned, nothing over and above from what the other investors require. Maybe we require some quarterly disclosures, etc. But it's in line with what the startup would be anyways providing to
Correct.
other investors. Yeah.
So on that note, I think we are on time, but I just want to wrap up by saying, I think there's always this fear of post-investment. There's a euphoria of getting a good, CVC on the cap table, but there's always this little fear. So I think we've dispelled a lot of those myths, perceptions that corporate VCs are sort of put in one box of being little predators and not being very cooperative, not also being a little lethargic. But as we are seeing, I think we have, arms which are, while they may be using the company balance sheet, they have their own DNA, I think, with seasoned professionals. So I think we need much more of this. We need this to be far more integrated with the entire investing ecosystem. Corporates do need to play a bigger role. Our startups need market access. They need the experience. They need, sometimes creating new sectors. They need the adjacency of large corporates, to support them. So I just see this very much, like Sonam rightly said, like a win-win. And Munitpa, like you said, there's no need to fear. I think we are all on the same page, waiting for the company to really deliver value. So I think wonderful to hear from the two of you, and I hope we see more of you in our ecosystem. So
Thank you, Paula. Thank you. We're all on the same page. That's a great way to end this amazing session. Interesting thoughts. Thank you, Munit, and thank you, Sonam.
Thank you.
Some
Thank
words
you.
of
Thank you, sir.
appreciation from the viewers. Really appreciate your time to come this morning and spend with CII. Thank you, Paula, for moderating session and keeping it back on time. So thank you. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye. With that, we move on to the last session and an important one, which is on building an impactful CVC strategy, lessons from the field. Swati Salgaonkar will be moderating this session. Amay Mashilkar is a bit delayed, but I will request Swati, in the interest of discipline, which I've had since morning of doing things on time, to kick off. Amay will join after 5-10 minutes. As usual, thank you, Tarun. Good to see you. Thank you for joining.
Likewise.
Participants,
Thank
if you have any questions, just post it in the chat. We are not going to open up any windows to ask live questions. And it is upon Swati to take it up as and when she thinks it's appropriate. Please post your questions in the chat. And Priyanka is there from CIES. She will post her email ID. So if you want any help or want to reach out to CIES, please reach out to her. Thank you, and over to you. Thank you for the time, and thank you, Tarun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ninad, for that introduction. I think we are the last of the sessions today in what's has been a very exciting day, talking about corporate venture capital, a subject that's very close to my heart. I'm very pleased we have two distinguished speakers today with us. As Ninad mentioned, Amay is just in the process of joining, but perhaps we'll get started with Tarun Mathur. He's an innovation-focused leader with over 2 decades of experience spanning corporate strategy, venture capital, and he's been involved with startups a lot across his professional career. Currently, he's with Zuno General Insurance. He drives digital transformation and strategic initiatives that bridge the gap between established corporations and emerging ventures. So thank you, Tarun, for joining us today. While we're waiting for Amay to join, maybe I'll just start with a question. So, of course, the whole day has been around, CVC and various aspects of it. But I know that different, investors and, have different kind of definitions. So maybe, you could share with us, what is your definition of corporate venture capital, and how do you see it, as differentiated from financial investments or, conventional venture capital, especially when it comes to early stage unlisted companies?
Surely. Thank you, Swati, and thank you, Ninad. Thrilled to be here. I think we're discussing a very pertinent topic, and I couldn't attend all of the earlier sessions, but I could see from the agenda and the speakers, I think must have been very insightful and enriching. Obviously, a lot has been deliberated on what a CVC is. If you ask me, feel they are the bridge between stability and experimentation for corporate, because it's much talked about in the previous session. Also, we were saying that while some of the corporates are lethargic, some of it, but it provides that a corporate to take those audacious bets, while preserving their real cash cow and working towards it. It's glad to see that obviously the VC investments and all that has seen a lot of rebound, and we are seeing new areas beyond tech, whether it is agri-tech, climate tech, all of these come up. And I feel corporate VCs provide that optionality, as an advantage for a corporate who actually takes it as a mainstream tool rather than something which just looks on annual report. So it's and different corporates, I would say, approach it differently, Swati. But if you have true champions, then you can really have a CVC flourish without becoming a drag on innovation. So yeah, that's what I feel.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Tarun. And what have you seen are, the most common asks from startups beyond obviously, the financial aspects and capital. In your experience, what do you see that, startup founders are looking for in a corporate VC?
Surely, I think that also has evolved a lot over time. Earlier, it used to, from what I could see earlier, they used to come thinking of it just like a service contract, right? But I think they are far more conscious and cautious, and they're far more demanding also. I think they understand the data, the credibility, the distribution power which a enterprise could bring in. So I am seeing that awareness within founders to think beyond just the financial investment, and also look for what all could a corporate, a conglomerate could help them with. Obviously, it takes a mutual value exchange, Swati, for it to flourish. Both founders, I feel, I always tell them that don't look at it just as a check, and look at all these other things, and how, more importantly, see how you can amplify their moat. That's when the real interest, would really pop up. And even for corporates, I think they have to also look at it like not just something, some team or somebody is doing within the organization, but as a true investment in a future bet. So it requires a mutual, as I said, value exchange. And, there is value for both. So, it's important for two minds to come together. I see Amay has joined in. So, hi, Amay. Good to see you.
Hi, Tarun. Hi, Swati. How are you?
Hi, Amay. Thank you so much for joining us. And just a quick introduction for our audience. Amay Mashirkar is a seasoned innovation and VC leader, and he has over 2 decades of experience in strategy, investment, and startup acceleration. And he currently heads GeoNext, which is a startup accelerator backed by Reliance Industries, where he mentors exceptional founders and also helps them to scale within the Geo ecosystem. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, Amay. Maybe I'll just start with one question which Tarun had answered before you were able to join. Different different people have different definitions of corporate venture capital. So, maybe if you could just share with us your definition, of the term, and also, how you see, CVC as different from, conventional financial, venture capital investing. So that I think that would be helpful to start with.
Sure, sure. First of all, thanks for having me here, and my apologies for joining late. So there was a little bit of a mix-up at my side. So firstly, I think the way we look at corporate venture capital is essentially it is access to innovation and talent as far as the corporate goes, that the startups sort of bring to the table. And this could be in any number of areas in terms of companies that are at a very early stage, or they could be in a growth stage. So across all stages, but essentially it is, the founders' ability to kind of solve problems at scale, and sort of the attitude that they bring to the table in terms of, solving these problems. And also, their ability to kind of look ahead and sort of, create solutions, far quicker than what one can do within the organization. So I think that's how we like to look at it. Um, we've been running the corporate accelerator, which becomes like a funnel for bringing in a lot of these startups into the Reliance ecosystem, whether it is on the energy side, or Jio, or even the Reliance retail side of things. And then once we kind of do some initial validation and proof of concept, it's clearer for us in terms of, how that relationship can evolve over a period of time. And then, of course, it can lead to a potential strategic investment. The way we like to look at it is not as a journey which culminates into an exit at some point, but more from the point of view of building an organization together. So in the traditional sense of venture capital, where there is a fund of, let's say, 10 to 12 years life, and it has about 3 or 4 or 5 years to invest, a few more years to sort of monitor the progress of the companies, and then to divest from these companies and then launch fund 2, etc. And that sort of cycle goes on. Versus the way corporate venture capital works, which is essentially these companies end up becoming a part of our ecosystem, and we work with the founders in terms of scaling those businesses as independent businesses, or they might get acquired fully and become part of the organization. So it depends on the situation. But yeah, I mean, broadly speaking, that's how we look at corporate venture capital.
Great, thank you. And before I move to the next question, just for the audience, if you have questions, I'll be taking them from the chat. So please make sure to post them there. Another question for both of you. How do you really look at, I guess, sourcing these, companies? How do you, kind of identify these founders? If you could just share a little bit more about the process you use for that.
You want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, fortunately for Reliance, it's a huge brand. So, there is always interest in connecting with, folks within the company and exploring some sort of engagement. So in that sense, as an accelerator and as somebody who's driving the program, I've been very fortunate to be part of that. And so from a brand perspective, that certainly helps. But at the same time, it's a very competitive field. There are other corporates, there are other accelerators, there are other venture capital funds, and everybody's sort of kind of wanting to be a part of a good startup's journey in that sense. So the way we look at it is, when it comes to very early stage, we work with a lot of incubators, other accelerators, venture funds that probably have invested, angel networks that have invested some amount of capital, and we are constantly doing an outreach to understand which are the companies that they are looking at investing, etc. So that is obviously something that really helps. And end of the day, this is an ecosystem. Everybody has to work together, collaborate. At least, I like to look at it that way, that we are all collaborators here, and it takes a village in some sense. So we've now looked at it as an exclusive relationship that we want to have with any any kind of ecosystem. So definitely, outreach on our part, but also there is a big brand pool which kind of helps us.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Tarun, would you like to add to that?
No, you're right. Obviously, they're not as big a brand as what Amay is associated with. But how we've done is we usually have anchored the whole initiative to around our key themes. For example, if you look at insurance, whether it is distribution, risk pools, and emerging tech, I think we constantly look out for organizations at the stage which we focus at startups, through accelerators, through angel funds, etc., to see who fits. And as Amay said, it takes some time. We get to know each other, we engage, and we understand the vision of the founder, and that's how it goes. So, yeah.
So there are a couple of questions around, how people can get in touch with you. So maybe if you're comfortable, you can share your email contact details in the chat. But specific, I think maybe then the startups can reach out to you individually. But while we're waiting for some other questions, I think something that would be interesting also to understand, from the CII membership perspective, right? The companies who are going to be sort of embarking on this journey. How do you balance, strategic goals with financial returns? Because at the end of the day, in a lot of these, I mean, maybe in a case of an accelerator, it's slightly different, but obviously in the other sort of corporate VC bets you take, there is that aspect as well, right? So just maybe if you could talk a little bit about how you balance, what the parent company is looking for in terms of strategic goals versus financial returns.
Yeah, should I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's a very tricky question, Swati, and honestly, that's something that I think everybody and Tarun will agree that all of us grapple with, which is strategic versus financial returns. For the last 20 years, like any CVC that has been set up has always had this sort of a dilemma in terms of how do we approach this. I think it's becoming a lot more clearer now, and there are different models that people approach. So first of all, what is the corporate's objective, right? It all starts with that. And so if you want to, let's say, build a new business, right? And you think that there are startups in the ecosystem that have some, head start in that ecosystem, then, obviously it has to be a strategic investment where the financial returns from that investment are sort of, long term, really long term. So you're not looking at sort of a 3 or 4 year or a 5 year horizon, but you're looking more long term. And so it gives you enough time to derive strategic value from these investments. So I think that's typically how one would approach it if there is a new area or a new business that one wants to get into. We, like, as Reliance has invested in many companies that have been at a very initial stage of their journey. And so we understand that it takes a very long time. Then there are obviously companies that bring in specific capabilities, technologies into the fold, and they are also at a stage where they've grown to a certain extent, and so maybe an acquisition could be a better way to integrate some of these technologies and teams into the organization, and so that's a different goal to pursue, right? But at the end of the day, I think every company that stands by itself after an investment has to be able to break even, stand on its own, and build its business on the basis of its own cash flows. The advantage is that when a corporate gets involved, obviously there's not unlimited money, but there is obviously a great amount of comfort in terms of not having to run around to raise capital, but there is this source of capital that you have, so that you can take your time to build your business. But yeah, I mean, end of the day, I think every investment has to deliver a good financial return one way or the other. And there are different ways of measuring this once an investment happens.
Thanks, Tarun.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, as I mentioned, there has to be a balanced view while you look for a strategic fit and also a financial return. I think it calls for a case-to-case analysis for each of these startups too. And usually we also take a little longer term view of how we are able to bring or co-create along with the startup. So I think, and that calls for various, sort of agreements and arrangements. It could be a joint IP, it could be building products together, going to market together, going. So there are various arrangements, but yes, um, a strong governance is something which becomes very crucial because unless you're seeing some 5x, 10x, 7x upside over 7, 8 months, it might be difficult for an enterprise to sustain that, especially for smaller enterprises like us. So a strong governance do come into picture, and but I'm just, as I said earlier, Swati, I'm seeing that relationship investing in that relationship becoming very more very I would say prominent, and it's encouraging to see a lot of founders understand that, because invest in that relationship capital and see how we could grow together and amplify the organization's moat, and trying to see how they bring value. So yeah.
Thanks. And a slightly broader question. How do you obviously corporate venture capital in India is fairly, it's early stages. Broadly, if you just look at the kind of startup or new age business ecosystem, we're growing rapidly, but we're still, not close to, say, a mature market like the US. So in the corporate venture capital world, what do you see as the key, kind of differentiators right now between, say, India and more mature markets like the US? And what do we really need to do, to kind of get there? It could either be from, from the startup side, from the corporate side, or maybe even the regulatory side. Maybe if you could just share your views on that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I think, Swati, if I can go ahead, I think it's the focus or the intent is the only difference which I see, because I think we all India has also understood the importance and seen good I would say case studies around CVC and startup scaling through that. But I feel corporates need to be a more of I would say they surely need to be far more driven and far more engaged orchestrators of this in India, and not just rely on some big few conglomerates to do it. We need far more, enterprises to do that, and there are opportunities. You could just help in building talent, or just help, driving certain policy changes, or you could drive sandboxes, experiments, or enable API economies. I don't know. So there could be various ways in which corporates can do that. I think it's happening little, far more in the other geographies, but yeah, surely scope for us.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tarun on those issues. If you just compare where India is today and where it was like 20 years back versus where let's say Silicon Valley or companies, large corporations in the West were and where they are today, right? So I think we are pretty head to head now in terms of investing in startups. I think there is a lot of interest right from the top management levels, and I'm not just talking about our company, but I'm talking about the ecosystem as a whole. I think there is recognition that startups are a great source of innovation, and that this innovation needs to be nurtured. That new ideas can come from sort of open innovation. So that recognition is there. I think in terms of the models in which corporations choose to invest and engage with the startup ecosystem can differ, right? And I think that's fine. Every company has its own model of how they want to invest and engage with startups. So I've seen a bunch of things happening. Like, for example, in the West, Cisco is a great example of how they have this cycle that keeps on going, right? Where they acquire these startups, the founders of these startups are part of the Cisco ecosystem. Then they think of a new idea, they step out, then Cisco kind of again goes and acquires the next startup that they build, and the cycle kind of continues. And that's really the sign of a mature corporate venture capital ecosystem, right? where you're allowing people to sort of, build, and then you're also giving them the initial capital and also uh, opportunities for the VCs and founders to find a good exit and then continue on their journey. So I think that is something that is some while to go for us. I mean, I don't think we are there in terms of that level of maturity, but certainly it's all on a case to case basis. It's the relationship that, and Tarun talked about that end of the day is the relationship that you build with the management of the corporation, and whether they trust you to do the right thing, and if you have that equation with them. So I think we are very proud as GeoGenX to give opportunities to founders that basically have no connection to the group, and they're essentially just cold calling us, and we are bringing them into the fold. And that itself is a very encouraging sign that you don't have to work with just the people that you know. So certainly, I mean, very positive indicators in India. Companies getting interested, each one of them has a different model to pursue. um, the West has shown typically how things are done. But yeah, I mean, certainly very exciting.
Thanks. And maybe each of you could just share a little bit, about how actively you're involved, you or your team, how actively you're involved with the investee companies. Is it more periodic in terms of, say, a board seat or a board observer seat, or do you really, kind of, is it a more actively engaged sort of an involvement with various issues that they may encounter? You both talked about, how they need opportunities to pilot, they may need, kind of proof of concept validation, maybe kind of figure out product market fit, whole bunch of things in the kind of startup journey. So maybe if you could just share, how you're involved with your investee companies.
I think, I mean, if I can go first, it all depends on the founders, really, the extent of the involvement. Like we can get a lot more involved, or we can be less involved. Depends on what the situation, what the context is, and what is it that we can do, right? Um, I think a classic example of within the Reliance ecosystem is a company called Adverb, which is in robotics, and I think the investment happened more than a few years back, and the company has like really scaled from the time that we invested in the company, and now, in fact, 90% of their business, more than 90% is not coming from us, whereas it was a significant portion of their business in the early stages was from us, and now they've grown and they're fairly independent robotics company, right? So I think that is a very cool example of how things can unfold. And so the founders really don't need you to kind of, be there on a day-to-day basis or an operational basis, but they need you for sort of support, for guidance, for strategic support, right? And so it depends, honestly. And personally, I think that you have to find the right balance. I mean, getting too involved or less involved is a challenge, but you have to find the right balance. But it depends on every company and at what stage they are, and typically what their journey looks like going forward.
No, I agree with. I mean, I think for us also it depends based on the interest, the excitement, at what stage are they building, and what's currently the focus for them. And it varies from startup to startup, other products. I mean, I have two members in my team who get over involved, and they feel that, oh, they're building this, let me, they're constantly on calls, they're talking to them and, meeting them often. So, which is good because, that's how founders also see some interest and, encouragement. But so it depends on what they're building, how close it is to us, at what speed do we want, sometimes. So yeah, varies.
Thanks. So there are a few audience questions. I'll try and club them. They're basically around, what do you see as emerging trends, or what are the emerging sectors that you would be looking at investing in? So someone is asking whether it's sort of, maybe it could be Web3, financial inclusion, open banking. There's also a question about, wellness and sports tech, how you're looking at that, and especially because you could possibly say use CSR funding for sectors like these as well. So maybe if you could just share your thoughts on what you see as the kind of emerging sectors or trends, and what you're looking for in a startup.
Sure. So I think I'm personally very excited about integrating AI into every aspect of our the organization, and bringing in startups that are actually building some really cool stuff using AI. So I think that is clearly a focus area for us, and also deep tech. Uh, yeah, so I think, anybody who's building anything in that space, my email ID is there in the chat. Please reach out. We'd love to kind of do a pilot. If the pilot works out, we would love to also look at a commercial engagement, uh, and or a strategic investment, right? And that's a journey that we can go on together. So I think, yeah, I mean, anything where AI is being meaningfully implemented within large enterprises. I've not seen a breakout yet in that space in India, especially, but there's a lot of excitement and a lot of stuff happening right now. I think the part of the challenge is that the models themselves are evolving so fast, and there is so much investment and activity happening in this space that it's really, really, it's going really fast. So anybody that's focused on AI in B2B enterprise tech, you know, please reach out.
Yeah, for us, I think it is enterprise B2B, EV, and usage-based insurance. If there is something around this space, we are very keen. And otherwise, any tech which helps improve our productivity and efficiency, we surely are open to exploring that.
Great, thank you. And I was wondering if each of you could maybe share a live example, of a startup that you've worked with, maybe currently or in the recent past, that has, been able to add value to the parent company, so whether so not just from a financial point of view necessarily, but in terms of, strategically or in terms of R&D. If you could just share maybe an example of that, I think that would help illustrate it for our audience as well.
I think a more recent example for us at GeoGenNext has been a company called Expertia, which implemented sort of an AI recruiter in the organization, and now is sort of deployed across, pretty much most part of the organization, retail, geo, energy, for new recruitments. And I think that has been a very interesting journey, right? From sort of, trying it out to sort of scaling it up within the organization. And it happened like really quickly. And that's the one thing about POCs and pilots, right? I think if you come with something that where we are feeling the pain point today, right? It gets implemented very quickly. But if you come with a pain point where we take a step back and say that, hey, look, let me look around and see, then that's like a hammer in search of a nail, in some sense. And that takes time. So Expertia is a great example. Look it up online. They're doing some very cool stuff with AI and HR.
I think for us, one which stands out is AutoViz. They're in the automotive telematics space. And I think with them, through them, we were able to, launch one of India's first pay-as-you-drive, motor insurance products. More important than the tech was the ability of the founders to come together, understand the vision, understand the speed, understand the market together. So that really stands out. And there are many others who do come in. AI is obviously everything is AI powered now. A lot of companies do come in to help around claims, underwriting. But we are also cautious, honestly, Swati. One is the whole optic side of it, and one is the productivity side of it, which can really add value to our core business, which is, for example, underwriting or pricing or actuarial or something like that. So yeah, but I'm surely, I mean, I'm seeing much more evolved, and self-aware founders. That's good to see, who understand the dynamics in investing in relationships and coming up to speed really fast. Yeah.
Thanks. So we're kind of coming up on time. So I have two sort of final questions. I think I think we have some Yeah. So just two final questions. I think I'll start with the first. So the first one is, they obviously we have a lot of founders who are in the audience. What would what would be your advice and maybe some actionable points, for them to follow in if they're looking to raise corporate venture capital? I think maybe it'd be great to hear that from each of you.
Yeah, so for us, I think the value prop is very clear that you have to be able to, we have to be able to give you a proof of concept or a pilot that you can come through on with very clear criteria for success. And then that has to, I mean, that can move into a commercial phase with us. I think that is something that's like a very strong filter that we apply. And so then the rest of it kind of, goes away. How much capital you already raised or, everything else is like, secondary. But I think the first thing is that can you come and deploy something within our organization and scale it up, right? I think that's a very, very big milestone for us to hit before we can consider you for an investment. And then it can be anything, right? The other thing I would say is that it has to have some core impact on our operations. I mean, it cannot be something ancillary, right? Which we can go out and license or, just sort of engage more sort of commercially and leave it at that. It has to really, really impact the organization. It has to be something that moves the needle within the company in terms of impact. And then it certainly qualifies for a strategic investment. And that's how I like to look at it. But then, there are also cases in our organization where based on the founder's credentials and the capability that we already know of, the founder has been able to raise millions of dollars from us just on the basis of the idea that the founder has. But that for the founder to reach that stage, it has taken that founder 20 years of building that equation with us already. So there's no product to prove, right? It's just, we are betting on the person who's actually going to make it happen. So both these scenarios, I would say, are there.
And sorry, I mean, just to kind of double click on something you said, it has to be something which impacts your core operations.
Yeah.
Do you put out problem statements or do a hackathon, or how would a startup kind of, understand? Because obviously, company A in terms of IP, B in terms of complexity, it may not be very obvious from just a website or, whatever publicly available information is available, what a company is really looking for.
So we as GeoGenX team, we have an insight track on what the stakeholders are kind of working on, looking for. Obviously, this is not public information, right? And then when we source startups, we have that at the back of our mind in terms of where exactly this would fit. And if we even see like there is a broad fit in mind, if there is a broad fit, then we also bring in at the initial evaluation stage the business team or the stakeholder to look at it. And if it's a if it's a thumbs up saying that, hey, look, let's try something out with these guys, looks exciting, it's a problem that we have, or it's an opportunity that we should grab, right? Then it kind of moves forward. So it's a little bit, honestly, there's no well-defined process. We don't put out problem statements on the web due to security reasons and confidential reasons. But as a team, we are aware of that. And that's the value that we can also bring to the table, right? Hopefully AI doesn't do that in the future. We'll be without a job.
Thanks. And Tarun, some advice for founders who are looking
No,
to
sure.
raise
I
money.
think Amey has covered most of it, but I usually say that while there is a lot of excitement and as builders, we want to encourage that, but don't come to us with a feature. Think a little more holistically, end to end, and try and see. That's what usually excites business owners, right? Otherwise, I do understand the excitement when somebody builds something, but I usually say try and think a little more holistically across the chain. That might help better.
Thanks.
I must
Sorry.
say out here, Swati, that Tarun and I used to be colleagues at Reliance. He was at Reliance, and he was one of the persons that I would rely on a lot to figure out what's going on and where could startups actually add value within the organization. So I'm happy to see the role that you're taking on now, Tarun.
No, thank you so much, Amey. it was really good to, and it's been wonderful seeing you build GeoNext to from where it was to now. So many cohorts and some such great companies have come out of it. So yeah,
Thank you.
really proud of that. Really proud of that.
Thank you.
And Tarun, for my last question, something which you kind of mentioned earlier when we were talking about the difference in, ecosystems here and in more mature market, you mentioned it's more on the company side in terms of an interest or a mindset. So any advice for our CII members, how they can really start to engage with startups and really kind of benefit from innovation or, R&D that's coming from these new agile companies?
I think I'm seeing a lot of that happening already, but maybe a little more deeper understanding of what corporates are really looking for, and that would come from a little more frequent interaction, with the corporates and startups, and and CII has been a great bridge between all of this. So I think the tech is evolving at a very fast pace. Business models are emerging at a very fast pace. So I think that speed is crucial. Swati. Yeah.
Thanks. And Amay, just some advice from you to our CII members on how they can, kind of start. It may not, obviously it takes time and effort and energy to build a platform like what you're running, but at least a few, early steps that they can take to engage with startups.
No, I think CII can, do so much because y'all are sort of at the center of it, right? It's an association of all these amazing companies in the country. So anybody, any company that's looking for innovation from to that can come from startups, I think it should be actively involved. And at a sort of a central level, maybe if you can build some kind of an interface between startups and these corporates, I think that'll be tremendous value add. And secondly, I would also say that, one of the jobs that we do at GenNext is that we like to optimize time for our internal people as well as for founders. And, founders essentially have no time and no money and only equity, right, to offer when they start off. So I think if you can even reduce the friction or the time that it takes for them to connect with the right people, within these large organizations, that is a huge value add for startups.
No, thank you. And I'd just like to reiterate for the members of our audience, of course, CII has the Center of Excellence for Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Startups, apart from, a lot of regional initiatives like the one Ninad has taken to connect startups and corporates. So I just encourage each of you to take advantage of that, reach out to the secretariat, and they can help connect you to the right people. But I see that we're sort of coming up on time. So I'd just like to thank Amay and Tarun. I think you mentioned that you've both been colleagues before, and that's clearly shown in the conversation, the comfort level, the kind of candidness and openness. And also thank you for, several of the actionable kind of inputs you've given to our audience members. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
No, it was a pleasure to be here, and thank you to you and Ninad, and lovely meeting you again, Amay. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody, and good to see Ninad. Hey, Ninad. We'll catch up soon. Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Tarun.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll hand it back to Ravi and Ninad for the closing.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you for moderating this amazing session. And again, Amay and Tarun, thank you for joining. Really appreciate your joining. With that, we come to a close of this half-day session on CVC. We have been working on this for some time, and I'm so glad it has flown smoothly and bang on time. That's the most important thing we managed to do it. It's a new topic. It's amazing. It's got a lot of potential, and all of you need to ensure that you somehow get on this bandwagon. Swati has also been very passionate about this topic for some time, and I'm sure she's happy that we have taken the initiative and had this after session. So thank you, Swati. And with that, I will hand it over to my co-chair, Ravi, for his closing comments.
Sure.
Over to you.
Thanks, Srinath. It's been absolutely delightful since morning. A whole list of people to thank, and who've actually made this possible. But I'm going to start with Mr. Chris Gopalakrishnan, for his keynote address, and especially so because he took time off while he's been, far away in Kohima. I'd also like to thank the other, moderators, Swati, Tarana, and Paula, for having moderated the session since morning. A big thank you to the CIES for collaborating with the CII for this event. And, Madhu, thank you for, as well as Priyanka and Jayesh from CIES. It's been a wonderful journey leading up to this morning. Anand, who's been, behind the scenes totally, but, actually probably doing the toughest of job to Anant and his team. Thank you very much. I think a few housekeeping things about what we are trying to do. First and foremost, every Thursday, and I think we started this sometime end April, early May, we have the CIS startup buzz session at 5 p.m. Right. So if anyone wants to be on that mailing list, you please post your email, and Anant here will send updates on what's happening. It's been mentioned on social media as well. I also want to add that the CIES has the CII CIES has a center in Hyderabad, which is offering a whole bunch of services for corporates as well as startups. So if any of you here in the audience is interested, you could get in touch, with them. With that, we conclude this session. Once again, thank you everyone, to the entire audience for having stayed on, and I hope it was as useful for you as it was for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anand, there are some emails coming. Just note them. They want to be part of the startup buzz. So please keep the session on for a couple of
Sure.
minutes while people
Surely, sure.
the note. And thank you. I'm logging off, but Anand,
Done,
please
done.
keep it on.
Sure.
Thank you everyone for participating. If you want to be part of the startup buzz, please post your email. Anand will put it. And we'll probably have a recording later. Anand will send email IDs to all of you. Thank you. I'm signing off. Thank you so much.